Welcome to Mr. Nightbleed. Tonight, in 4 real encounters with something not human in the cemetery, we step into the darkest corners of the world, where the noise of the living fades, and only the cold breath of the dead moves between the graves. These are not legends, these are confessions. Stories whispered by those who saw something in the cemetery that was definitely not human. Every account you're about to hear comes from people who walked into the silence of a graveyard and felt eyes on them from somewhere that shouldn't have been watching. My goal this month is to reach 4,000 subscribers. Almost 90% of viewers wander in, listen, and vanish into the darkness without subscribing. Don't be one of them. Join the shadows. Subscribe now. Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what hour of the night it is for you. And if there's a cemetery in your town that feels wrong, type its name below. Because when the world sleeps and the soil settles, not everything beneath it rests. Kill the lights, silence your room, take a slow breath, and let us begin. My name's Eric Dalton. I'm from just outside Glen Rose, Texas, and I work as a cemetery groundskeeper. Mostly mowing, trimming, filling in sunken spots, and making sure families don't see how much the place wants to fall apart when there's no funeral going on. And I'm sitting here in my old Buick by the front gate right now, the one with the battery that needs a jump every other week. It's 3 inches the morning, and my phone screen is cracked so bad it looks like a spider web when the light hits it. But it's recording, and I'm talking, and I'm praying. Nobody else pulled into this little gravel turnout, because if they see me out here saying all this, they're gonna think I finally broke for real. But I just need to get this out, because I haven't slept right since that night. And every time I try, I hear that sound again, that tapping. So I'm just gonna start where it was normal. All right, listen, that day was a Thursday in January. I remember because the calendar in the shed still had December on it, and I kept meaning to flip it and never did. I woke up at 6:10 that morning in my little duplex on the edge of town, the one with the stain on the bedroom ceiling that looks like the state of Oklahoma if you squint at it. And I remember the time because I always set my alarm for 6, but I was already half awake when it went off. I turned it off and just stared at the numbers for a second, 6 to 10, glowing red, and I thought about calling in sick because the cold was already in the air, and I hate winter grave work. The ground goes hard, your hands crack, every sound carries. But we were short that week, and I knew my supervisor would be the one stuck doing my checks if I didn't show. So I got up, stepped on the same loose board by the bathroom that creaks, used the toilet, brushed my teeth with the cheap mint paste that always tastes a little salty, and then I went into the kitchen, poured myself a bowl of cornflakes that were already going stale, no sugar because I'd run out, and I ate them standing up at the sink while I watched the neighbor's dog run along the fence line chasing nothing. And the only weird thing, the only tiny thing that I keep thinking about now is that when I looked out that kitchen window, I could see the top of the cemetery hill over the houses, just the edge of it with the old oak tree, and the little white maintenance shed roof peeking. And I remember thinking the streetlight near the gate was still on, even though the sky was already kind of gray with morning. And that bothered me for some reason I can't explain, like that light should have gone off by then, but I just told myself the timer was off and let it go. I pulled on my work pants with the knee patch my sister sewed on after I tore them last fall, and my dark green polo with Somerset Hill Memorial Park stitched over the chest. There's a bleach stain near the right side where I splashed something 2 summers ago when I was scrubbing bird droppings from a bench. I threw on my heavy brown jacket with the missing top button, pulled my work boots on, double knotted them because the laces keep coming loose, grabbed my cap from the hook, the one with the company logo all faded, and I checked my phone. It said 6:42. I had 18 minutes to be at the gate. Shift starts at 7. No clock to punch, just the old clipboard in the shed where we sign in. I got in the same Buick I'm sitting in now, turned the key, it coughed the way it always does, and I told it, come on, one more day. Man, just like I always do, I drove the same route I always take. Up past the feed store, right at the church with the peeling white paint, then left at the little sign that just says Somerset Hill with an arrow. The sky was that kind of pale winter color that never really turns blue, just light gray, and the air had that damp smell, wet dirt and old leaves. I pulled up to the gate at 6:57 like always. Wide metal archway, name welded across the top, 2 big stone pillars, 1 security light on the right side, 1 on the left. And the thing that pinged the back of my head again was that the right light was off and the left one was still on, which is backwards from how they usually flip. Most mornings they both shut off with the same delay, or if one lags, it's the right, not the left. And I know that sounds stupid, but you notice patterns when you walk the same rows every day. I unlocked the chain on the gate, rolled it back, drove in, parked on the little gravel pad by the shed, killed the engine, heard that sputter like it wanted to keep running, then silence. I went in the shed, flipped the light, that buzzing fluorescent tube, signed my name and 7-2 next to it, because I always round to the nearest 5 minutes, and I was a little late by then. And my supervisor, Carl, wasn't in yet, just his coffee mug on the shelf with the chipped handle. The radio in the corner was already on from the day before, turned way down, same country station full of static in the mornings. And I remember they were talking about a cold front, like it wasn't already cold. I put on my work gloves, the thick ones with the leather palms, grabbed the ring of keys for the gates and the mausoleum and the utility closet and stuff, grabbed the little spiral notebook where I write down what needs fixing, stuck it in my jacket pocket with a pencil, and I headed out like I always do when I have first shift. First thing after a couple days of bad weather is always the same. Walk the rows, check for fallen branches, blown flowers, anything obvious, and then do the stone checks like the owner calls them. Just making sure nothing's sunk or tipped or been messed with. And last on the list is always the mausoleum, up on the far corner. Because families like to know, somebody looks at it every day. It's not big, not like those giant city ones. Just one square brick building with a stone front and metal door, maybe room for a couple dozen crypts inside. I walked out, gravel crunching under my boots on the main path, breath puffing in front of me. You could see little bits of frost on the grass in the shaded areas. And the plastic flowers in some of the vases had that stiff look, a little rim of white on the edges where moisture had frozen. And it all felt normal, just cold. I did the lower rows first, the old section with the tilting stones and the names nobody visits anymore. Then the newer side where the stones are clean and the dates are fresh and you see the same last names over and over. I picked up a couple of fake flowers that had blown off and set them back, made a note to straighten one leaning marker. And I remember checking my phone at 8:13, because I always try to be done with the main walk by 9 if there are no services scheduled. I checked the whiteboard in the shed that morning. No funerals, no viewings, just me and whoever was under the ground that day. Carl usually comes in around 9:30 for paperwork. That's how it goes. And all morning, nothing felt wrong. It was just a regular winter day in a small cemetery, which is its own kind of quiet, but a kind I know you hear birds. You hear a truck on the highway a mile away. You hear the wind through the big oak near the hill, and you hear your own boots. Always that crunch, crunch, crunch between stones. That sound gets in your bones after a while. Anyway, the day went like that, slow. I took lunch at 11:45, sat in the shed, microwaved a leftover chicken leg and some rice in a stained plastic container, drank a can of cola that was more warm than cold. Carl came in while I was eating, said, "Morning, Eric." And I said, "Hey, Carl, nothing on the board." And he said, "Good. Maybe we'll actually catch up on those edging jobs." Normal stuff. We talked about the game from the night before. He laughed about the quarterback. I washed my container in the sink that drains slow, left it upside down on the towel, signed back in on the sheet for the afternoon, and the only thing he asked me to do different was stick around late that night. He said, "Listen, we've had some folks complain about seeing kids in here after closing, sneaking in between the back fence and the drainage ditch. Can you stay a little later and do a walk through after dark, just to make sure nobody's messing around in here?" And I said, "Sure, because overtime is overtime and I can use every dollar." And he said he'd check the cameras from home too, because they hooked up 2 new ones a few months back, one by the front gate and one watching the mausoleum, since that's the most expensive structure on the grounds. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. It was just another thing to do. Afternoon passed. I raked some leaves that never seemed to stop falling from that oak, even in winter, cleaned up some old faux flower arrangements that had faded so bad they were almost white, fixed the leaning stone I wrote down earlier by packing a little dirt under it, and at 4, 45, Carl came by the shed with his coat on and said, "Lock the gate at 5, give it an hour, then do one last walk and you can head out. Note the time for me and I'll put the extra on your sheet." And I said, "All right," and watched him drive off in his little blue pickup. Taillights disappearing down the curved drive. Sun was low by then, that weird yellow that winter has, shadows long across the graves, and as 5 rolled around, I went to the gate, checked the lane for any last cars, saw none, swung the gate shut, ran the chain through, clicked the lock, checked it twice. I always tug it. I hate the thought of it being opened by accident. Then I went back to the shed, sat for a bit, looked at my phone, scrolled nothing, hands kinda cold even with gloves off. The overhead light flickered once and steadied. Radio hummed, something forgettable, and I remember looking at the clock on the wall, a round one with a picture of some funeral supply company on the face, and seeing 5:12, thinking, all right, I'll head out at 6, nice even time, do a quick lap, call it a night. The world got dark fast. That's what winter does. One minute you can see clear to the hill, next minute it's just outlines. I could see the glow from the town over the trees, barely, and the security lights clicked on outside. I heard the one by the gate buzz a little in that way, and the one by the maintenance shed window cast that ugly pale yellow light on the gravel at 5:58. I remember because I checked. I put my gloves back on, zipped my jacket up all the way, grabbed my flashlight from the shelf. It's one of those heavy black ones, not fancy but bright enough, and I stepped out into the cold. My breath puffed white right away. Air had that metallic smell like when it's about to rain, but colder. No rain though. Sky was clear. And the cemetery looked different the way it always does after dark. Same stones, same trees. But when you only see what the lights and your flashlight show you, your brain fills in a lot. I told myself, like I always do, it's just you, it's just rocks and names. You've walked these rows 1,000 times. Man, don't be dramatic. I headed down the main lane, beam sweeping left and right, catching polished granite and old marble and little stuffed animals on some of the children's graves. And I did a slow walk, listening. All I heard at first was gravel under my boots and a faraway dog. I came up the hill toward the back section where the mausoleum sits, back near the fence that runs along the old farm road, and I noticed how much quieter it got up there. You lose the little bit of town noise, it's just wind and the occasional creak from the trees. And that's when the first wrong thing hit me. The air on the hill felt warmer than down by the gate. Not by much, but enough that the breath in front of my face didn't hang as long. And I know that hill, it's usually colder, not warmer. Cold air settles up there worse. But I kept walking, telling myself hills and wind and whatever. My light hit the side of the mausoleum as I came up the last bit of path. The building sitting there like a big brick box with that pale stone front and the double metal doors, nameplates around the frame, little concrete benches on either side. And I saw something that made me stop. Not something big, just the door, the left door, had a little gap at the bottom where it meets the threshold. Not open, just like it wasn't flush. We keep it sealed pretty tight. Especially in winter, I check that handle by habit every day. But that night, from 10 or 15 feet away, with the light glancing off it, I could see a sliver of darkness at the bottom edge, where there normally isn't one. And I remember thinking, did someone not pull it shut all the way earlier? Did I walk by at lunch and miss it? I moved closer, gravel softer here because the path ends and turns to compact dirt with some small stones, my boots quieter, and when I got within maybe 6 feet, that's when I heard it, this soft little tap from the other side of the door. Not a bang, not scratching, just a tap, like a finger, against metal. Slow, 1, 2, 3, then nothing. I stopped dead, light pointed a little to the right of the door, didn't want to shine it straight on for some reason I can't explain. My heart started going faster, and I told myself, calm down, the building settles, metal expands and contracts. You've heard pops and creaks in there before. Then it came again, tap, 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 same rhythm, soft, like someone knocking without really wanting to be heard. I swallowed and did the dumb thing, the thing you do when you don't want to admit you're nervous. I said out loud that you, Carl, you messing around. Even though I knew he'd gone home hours ago, and my breath made a little cloud in the beam, I stepped closer, right up to the door, raised my free hand, and knocked back 3 times. Same pattern. Knuckles on cold metal, thinking I was being funny for nobody but myself, trying to prove to my own brain that this was nothing. The metal gave a little under my knuckles. Solid, familiar. And for half a second I felt better, like I'd punctured the tension. Then from inside the mausoleum, right where I'd knocked, there was an answer. 3 knocks, faster than mine, louder than mine, exactly matching the rhythm I just did, like it had recorded me and was playing it back. Then 3 more, even faster. Then 3 more, so quick they almost blended into one long rattle. My heart jumped up into my throat. I took a step back without deciding to. My flashlight hand dropped a little, the beam sliding down the door to the threshold, and the tapping stopped. As sudden as it started, dead quiet, no echo, nothing, just me breathing and the faint hiss of the wind somewhere in the trees. My first thought was, somebody got locked in there, some kid slipping in when we weren't looking, some teenager hiding from us as a joke. The keys were heavy on my belt, and my hand went right to them, because that's my job. Check, open, make sure nobody is trapped. All the while, my head was yelling at me, there is no way, because we only opened that place for services, and we didn't have one today, and I know went through and locked it the last time it was used. Still, I fumbled with the ring, found the mausoleum key, big brass one, stuck it in the lock under the handle, and it didn't want to go in right at first. Like the hole was a hair off, but it finally slid, and it turned, and the handle gave just a little, not enough to open, just a little shift, like something heavy was leaning against the other side of the door, holding it shut from inside. And in that same second, my flashlight beam caught something on the stone frame. Just at eye level around the edge of the door, pale shapes against the gray. I lifted the light, slow, and saw what they were. There were prints on the inside of the glass set into the stone, not painted glass, just a narrow vertical rectangle of glass to bring some light in. And on the inside of that glass were handprints, 4 of them, overlapping the size of mine, or maybe a bit smaller, pressed flat from the inside, clearer near the top, smeared near the bottom like something had slid down. They were too fresh looking, too clear, like condensation and oil from skin. Only I knew the temperature. It was cold. Cold enough that when I raised my free hand and touched the outside of that glass, it burned my fingertips from the chill. I stood there staring, and as I stared, the topmost print, the one near the corner, got clearer, like it was being made right then. The base of the palm darkened, then the pads of the fingers, then the tips, like something inside was pressing harder. I took another step back, key still in the lock, my pulse loud in my ears, and I said, this full sentence came out without me planning. Whoever's in there, you need to say something right now. This is not funny. My voice sounded small and thin. Nobody answered with words, but from inside, right behind the door, just off center, there was this small shift, a sound like stone, rubbing stone, and the left side of the big front slab that holds the nameplate, the one that's supposed to be sealed with mortar and steel anchors, moved an inch, maybe 2, outward, just enough that I saw the shadow line change as my light hit it, just enough that the handprints on the glass trembled and the bottom one smeared a little more. That's not possible. Those slabs take a whole crew and a lift to set in place. When they put someone in there, they aren't doors you can push, they're not meant to move, and there was no sound of metal clanking or anything, just that low grinding, like something deep in the foundation, shifting. My legs turned to rubber, my stomach went ice cold, and I yanked the key out of the lock so fast I almost snapped it. I took 2, 3 steps back, turned, and I ran. I'm not proud of it, I just did. Down the path, boots slipping a little on loose gravel, flashlight beam bouncing wild over stones and dirt, my breath loud and ragged. I remember thinking, if I look back and that door is open all the way, I won't be able to keep going. So I didn't. I kept my eyes on the dark shape of the shed down the hill, just that and the pool of light by it. I got there and my hands shook, trying to get the door open. I slammed it behind me, flicked the lock, which is nothing, just a cheap little turn latch, like that would help. And I pressed my back against the wood and listened. You can still hear outside sounds in there, muffled. But I waited for footsteps on the gravel, for someone yelling, for anything. But it was just the radio low and my own breathing. I grabbed my phone out of my pocket, looked at the screen, 6:19. I swear to you, it hadn't felt like 20 minutes since I checked the clock at 5:58 and decided to start the walk. I would have said 5, maybe, but I know how fast panic can stretch time. I sat down on the old chair in the corner, the one with the rip in the vinyl seat, trying to slow my breathing, telling myself, you need to go back, you need to check. If some kid is in there somehow, you can't just leave. But every time that thought got to the part where I put my hand on that handle again, my fingers cramped up like they were refusing. I don't know how long I sat like that, just listening. At some point, the radio music changed to some late night show, people laughing about something I couldn't make myself pay attention to. My phone buzzed once, made me jump. It was a text from Carl, 6:47. It said, "You done with that last walk? Cameras look fine from here, nothing moving but you up there." And that line hit me sideways, because if he saw nothing moving but you up there, that means he was watching me when I went toward the mausoleum. I texted back with fingers that didn't want to type, thought I heard something near the building, going to recheck in a bit. And he replied, "You're good, man. Gates locked, kids locked out. Go home when you're done." I almost told him then, almost typed. There were handprints on the inside of the glass and the slab moved, but the part of my brain that still wants paychecks and not psych evaluations stopped me. And I just put, okay, leaving soon. I couldn't make myself walk back up that hill that night. I'm telling you the truth. I finished the rest of the lap down near the old part, fast, beam barely slowing on each row, telling myself that counted. Then I locked the shed, got in my car, and when I turned the key, the engine took longer than usual to catch. It whined, then finally turned over. And I swear I had this picture in my head of that door up there creaking open as my taillights went down the drive. I drove home on side streets, hands tight on the wheel, turned the radio up too loud just to drown out the echo of that knocking. When I got home, I didn't eat, didn't turn the TV on, just sat at my small kitchen table with my jacket still on, phone on the wood in front of me, and stared at nothing until the clock on the stove blinked 11:23 because the power had done that little flicker thing like it does sometimes and reset the time. Sometime after that, I must have fallen asleep in the chair because I woke up with a crick in my neck and light spitting in through the blinds. It was Friday, my day off, and my first thought, right on waking, before coffee, before anything, was those handprints. I told myself, you imagined half of it. You were tired, long day, dark plays, tricks. Go up there on your own time, look in the daylight, prove it was nothing. But I didn't go that day. I stayed home, did laundry, watched some show without really seeing it, jumped every time a truck drove by outside because the passing headlights made lines on my ceiling. Saturday I slept late, ended up driving to the next town over to get groceries because I didn't want to pass the road that leads to the cemetery. And then Sunday evening my phone buzzed with a call from Carl. I almost let it go to voicemail, but I picked up and said, "Hey." He said, "Listen, you got a minute to swing by the office tomorrow before your shift. The owner wants to talk to you about something on the cameras." And my stomach dropped. I said, "What cameras?" Even though I knew, and he said, "The mausoleum one, man, he wants to make sure the wiring's not bad. Just come by a little early." That whole night I hardly slept. Kept seeing the glass and the prints every time I closed my eyes. Next morning, I got up at 6, like usual, went through the same motions. Cereal, boots, jacket, only my hands shook a little when I tied the laces. I drove the same route, but slower. Pulled into the cemetery a little after 6:40, parked by the office instead of the shed. Owner's car was there, big dark sedan, lights inside the office on. I went in, and he was sitting by the desk with Carl, both looking at the computer monitor they use for the security system. That cheap one with a 4-way split screen, 2 feeds for the gate, 1 for the main lane, 1 for the mausoleum. The owner turned and smiled, that tight smile he has, and said, "Morning, Eric. Sorry to drag you in early. We just had a little glitch last night and wanted your eyes on it." My mouth felt dry. I said, "Sure," and he pointed at the screen. "This is 8 o'clock yesterday evening." He clicked on the mausoleum camera. Full screen, black and white, fixed high up on a pole near the corner of the fence. Looking down at the building and a slice of the hill, I saw myself in the frame from the night before, walking up the path, flashlight beam cutting through the snow of the image. I didn't look as scared as I felt. I watched myself go right up to the door, and then the owner slid the time bar, and the image jumped. There was a timestamp in the corner, 6 hours, 7 minutes, and 12 seconds when I first walked up. Then a skip, then 6, 18, 39, and I was already halfway down the hill, walking fast, but not quite running. They must have seen that too, because the owner frowned and said, "See there? We've got a gap, about 11 minutes missing. Same at the gate cam. It just cuts, then comes back. Lightning storm would do it, but the sky was clear. You remember anything weird? Power flicker? Maybe my tongue felt heavy." I said, "I thought I heard someone inside. I checked the door. It was locked. I guess I just walked back," which wasn't a full lie, but not the truth either. And he shrugged like it didn't matter much, then said, "It's probably just the system rebooting." But here, this is the weird part. And he pulled up a different time, 2-3 inches the morning, same night, and my skin went cold. The screen showed the mausoleum again, empty hill, no one around. But there was a shape in front of the door, centered, a darker patch against the lighter gray of the stone, tall, too tall, stretching from the ground almost to the top of the frame. And it didn't look like a person. It was just a silhouette, with no detail, like someone had cut out a person shape from black paper and pasted it there. And it was perfectly still, no shift with the slight camera shake, no movement at all. Timestamp in the corner ticked, 2 hours, 3 minutes, and 17 seconds, 2 hours, 7 minutes, and 54 seconds, 2 hours, 28 minutes, and 12 seconds. That thing never moved. It just stood there, or whatever you call what it was doing. And what made my stomach twist was that there were no shadows on the ground. From the security light, usually when someone stands near that door, you see the light behind them throwing a shadow. Here there was nothing. It was like the shape itself was sucking up the light. The owner said, 3 hours, this black thing just sits there, no one in the cemetery, gate locked, we checked the logs, no cars, no motion on any other camera, then it just isn't there anymore. And we don't have any footage of it leaving, it's just gone from one frame to the next. He laughed right after, a nervous little laugh, and said, "Maybe some bug on the lens. Spider, I don't know, but it's odd, right?" And he looked at me like I was supposed to give an answer that made it simple. I stared at the screen, and my head started to ring a little, because all I could think about was the way the slab moved and the prints on the glass and the time that skipped, and now this blank dark standing where I had been, and I heard my own voice say, "Yeah, maybe a bug. Those things look bigger than they are on these cameras," which is not what I believed at all. But saying anything else would have made his eyes go hard and narrow, and I'd be out of a job and branded as that guy. You know exactly what I mean. And he nodded like he'd been waiting for someone to say something normal. Said, "We'll have the company check the system, but if you see any kids messing around up there, let us know. I don't want anyone breaking in." I said, "Yes, sir," and walked out of that office with my legs feeling like they didn't belong to me. I was supposed to start my regular shift, but instead I went straight to the shed, grabbed my notebook, and when I got to the page for that night, where I jot little things during overtime, I saw that the line I'd written when I came back after running was shorter than I remembered. I'd written "final lap okay," with the time 6:30. No note about the sound, no note about the door. And that scared me almost as much as anything else, because I always write details when something's off. And to see that I hadn't, like I'd already decided to bury it even then, made me feel like part of me was working against myself. I didn't go up to the mausoleum that morning. I traded tasks with Carl, told him I'd do trim work by the front if he wanted to handle the upper rows, said my knee was acting up on the hill, which sometimes it is, and he just shrugged and said fine. The whole day, I kept glancing at the hill through the trees and the gap between the sheds, and sometimes it felt like the building was a little closer than it should be, just a hair, like it was watching from up there, and now it's been weeks, and I still haven't gone back up to that door. Not alone, not in daylight, not at all. I work the lower sections. I trade off. I make excuses. I tell the boss my back hurts on inclines. And every time someone mentions a burial in the mausoleum, my heart starts pounding long before I can hear it, I used to cut through other cemeteries when I was driving in other towns, just because the roads through them are usually short and quiet, cheap, gas-saving habits. I won't do that now. I won't even walk on the sidewalk that runs along the fence of one. I cross the street. I turn my head away when we pass one on the highway. My niece had a school project where she had to write down the oldest date she could find in our cemetery, and she asked me if I'd take her up there on a Saturday, and I told her no, without even thinking, and then made up something about them not wanting kids unsupervised there, which is only half true. The real truth is, I can't be the one to take her between those rows, because I know that once we get within sight of that mausoleum door, my hands will start shaking, and she'll see. And I don't want her knowing there are things in this world that will knock back at you where they have no business being. I stopped going to funerals too. I used to attend when it was someone connected to my family or someone from church, stand in the back, hat in hand. It felt like part of my job, even when I was off clock. Now, if I find out there's one happening, I suddenly remember a chore I have to do, anything to avoid that sound, the clunk of a casket, the thud of earth on wood, because now I hear that and my brain swaps it with that hollow, perfect response, knock on metal, just 3 taps answering mine exactly, and it twists my stomach. I keep thinking about that missing 11 minutes, about the time between 6, 7, and 6, 18, where the camera saw nothing of me, but my body remembers the feel of the key sticking in the lock and the sight of the print blooming on the glass. And I wonder if there's a version of that tape somewhere that does show it, that isn't blank, that plays out the way I experienced it, and if someone hit play, what they'd see when that slab nudged out. I won't ask the owner about it because I don't want to invite any more of it into my life than is already in my head. But I think about it late at night, when everything's quiet and the only sound is that click the heater makes when it shuts off, and my mind goes back over every second of that walk, looking for some detail that makes it less impossible, and never finding one. I started doing small things without really deciding, like parking my car turned away from any building that has no windows but has a door, because I don't like the feeling of getting in and thinking there's something standing out front that I can't see. I started sleeping with my bedroom door shut and locked, even though I live alone. And when I wake up in the dark, I listen for tapping that isn't there yet. My fingers remember exactly how that door felt. The slight give when I tried to pull it, like there was pressure from the other side that didn't care I was there. I used to joke with new hires about residents and neighbors when we walked the grounds. Stupid cemetery humor. I don't do that anymore. It doesn't feel funny. It feels like tempting something. I know you might be thinking it was just somebody inside, somebody who broke in, some messed up prank. But here's the thing. I've seen the inside of that mausoleum when it's empty of people, only the crypts and the narrow aisle and the cold quiet. There's no place to hide, no corners, no back door, and the only way in or out is that front, and there were no footprints in the dirt the next day up that hill, besides mine and Carl's. No scuffs by the door, no scratches in the paint, and the stone around the slab was smooth like it always is. No fresh mortar, no gaps. If it had moved as much as my eyes tell me, there should have been signs, something, and there weren't. I walked up there with him trailing me, pretending my stomach wasn't flipping, and in the daylight the place looked like it always had, solid, fixed, and I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it, until he stepped up beside me, looked at the glass, and said, "Huh, that's strange. Can you see on your side?" and pointed, and I leaned in and realized he was pointing at something small, a little streak on the inside of the glass near the bottom, faint, like someone had dragged a fingertip there once, and it had almost faded, and my throat went dry because it lined up exactly where that lowest smeared handprint had been in my memory. And before I could think, I said, "Probably just condensation from before they sealed it last time." And he nodded and turned away, and I knew right then I was going to carry this by myself, because nobody else wanted to see it for what it was, or whatever it was. Look, I know this is long, and I know it sounds like a pile of small things, but I haven't slept right since, and I've tried to keep it all in, tried to push it down and just do my job. But then I find myself here, in this car, parked by the gate at 3 inches the morning on my day off, with the hood cooling and that stupid battery light glaring back at me, holding my cracked phone up and talking like I'm talking to someone who will actually believe me. And I keep glancing in the rearview mirror at the entrance, even though it's just darkness and the shape of the open ironwork, because I can't shake the feeling that the shape from that camera, that tall, still patch of dark, is going to be standing under the arch one of these nights, just inside the line where the gravel starts, facing this car, and if that ever happens, I don't think there will be any running downhill to the shed or any office meeting the next day. I think whatever is inside that building and whatever stood outside it for 3 hours without moving knows me now. It has the pattern of my knock, the shape of my hand on its glass, the little tremor in my voice when I told it this wasn't funny, and it's patient. It waited until a quiet winter night when I was alone and the gate was locked and the town was half asleep, and it could wait again. That's the part that won't let me rest. Not the moving stone or the missing minutes, but the idea that I started something when I decided to tap back, that I answered something that never should have been engaged, and now every time I walk past any stone, any marker, any sealed place for the dead, I feel this quiet attention from under the ground and behind the walls, like they're waiting to see if I'll be dumb enough to raise my hand and knock again. My name's Eric Dalton. I'm from the north side of Rockford, over by the old rail yard, and I work as the night security guy for Holy Mercy Catholic Cemetery. And I know how that sounds, and I know you do not care where I punch in, but I need you to understand I am not some kid messing around. I am tired all the time now, and my hands shake when I turn a key, and I have not slept right since that first shift. And I am sitting here in my car by the cemetery gate at 3 in the morning with the battery light flickering and my phone at 20%, just trying to say this out loud once so it stops replaying in my head every time I close my eyes. And if I sound mixed up, it is because I am. Man, I am telling you I am doing my best to go in order, but my mind keeps jumping. So let me start with the boring part. The part nobody ever cares about, because that is how it really was at the start, just another day, nothing strange, no hint that anything was off. That morning, I got up at 6 because my sister had to be at work by 7, and we share the same place and the same car most days, so I was making sure she got out the door first, and I remember exactly what I ate because it made my stomach heavy later. 2 pieces of toast with too much peanut butter, 1 cup of cheap coffee with powdered creamer, and a banana that was more brown than yellow, and I was standing at the sink in that little apartment kitchen with my work shirt half buttoned, the one with my name patch crooked on the chest, Eric in red thread, and a grease stain on the bottom from some old job before this one, and my sister walked past and said, "You sure about this night shift thing? It is going to mess you up." And I laughed and told her I was already messed up from all the day jobs that paid worse, and I said, "At least dead people do not fight in the parking lot." And I wish I had not said that now because I hear that line in my head every time I drive by that place. I checked my phone. It was 6:27 a.m. and the security company app had the schedule for the week, and that night was circled because it was my first time covering Holy Mercy overnight instead of the usual warehouse. I had been out there in the daytime with one of the older guards, doing the walk around, learning the gate codes, learning where the cameras were, which lights were on motion sensors and which ones stayed on, all of that stuff. It looked like any other cemetery, maybe a little more crowded, headstones of every size, some old marble ones that were leaning a little, some newer polished ones with pictures on them, 2 mausoleum buildings with the long walls of glass front niches, and a little brick office by the entrance road with a statue of an angel on top. Nothing scary in the day, just neat rows and cut grass and plastic flowers that faded in the sun. The boss told me, "Night shifts there are easy, man. You just drive the loop, respond if an alarm pings. Mostly it is teenagers trying to get in after hours or some guy cutting through to the back street." He said I would probably be bored and told me to bring a thermos. I did. When I left the apartment that night, it was 10:12 p.m., according to the kitchen clock. I put on the same work shirt, my black jacket over it, my dark blue work pants with the knee that is starting to go thin, and my steel toe boots. I checked my pockets 3 times before I left. Phone, keys, little flashlight, folding knife, mints. I stopped at the gas station on the corner and filled the thermos with fresh coffee that smelled burnt but strong. The air outside was already cold in that October way that gets into your bones, and there was this low white haze hanging near the ground that you could see in the parking lot lights. Not full fog yet, but close. The guy at the counter asked if I was heading to work, and I said, "Yeah, "Holy mercy, night shift, first time." And he laughed and said, "Man, better you than me." And I laughed back because that is what you do, and I did not think about it until later. The drive from my place to the cemetery is 15 minutes if you hit the lights right. The whole time, the local station was playing old rock songs and doing the late call-in thing. I remember one caller complaining about road construction. It was all so normal that thinking about it now makes me feel a little sick because there was nothing special to mark that night as different, nothing like in movies where the sky looks wrong or the radio cuts out or all the dogs in the neighborhood start barking. When I turned onto the street that runs along the back of the cemetery fence, it was 10:27 p.m. My dashboard clock has a little blue light, and it was bright enough that I remember it. The cemetery fence on that side is old iron, tall, with a brick base, and those spear tip bars. And during the day, you can see in between them, see the gravestones and the trees and the narrow road that loops around, but at night all you see are the patches of light from the lamps and dark in between. There's a sidewalk and then the street. And across from that just houses regular single-story places with porches and plastic Halloween decorations still up. The cemetery sits like a big, dark rectangle pressed up against the neighborhood. I parked by the small side gate like I was supposed to, badge on my belt, radio clipped, thermos in the cup holder, and I remember sitting there for a second with the engine off and the ticking sound of the cooling metal and thinking, okay, this is fine. All you have to do is walk the loop, check the locks on the mausoleums, watch the cameras, and try not to fall asleep. The main office for night shift is not the little brick building you see from the main road. That one is for daytime staff. Nights we use a small prefab office near the back service entrance, kind of a trailer with 2 windows, a desk, and the monitor for the camera feeds. You have to unlock the side gate and drive in along the back path to get to it. I got out of the car, breath visible in the air, asphalt under my boots, a little damp from an earlier drizzle. The fog was thicker on the cemetery side, clinging low over the grass and patches. It smelled like wet earth and cut grass and that cold metal smell you get around old fences. I swiped my key card on the pad by the gate, the light blinked green, the chain lock released with a clack. The gate creaked when I pulled it open. Normal, just old hinges. My radio crackled softly as it picked up the company channel. "Unit 9 checking in at Holy Mercy," I said like they trained us. The dispatcher's voice came back, bored and clear. "Copy, Unit 9, Holy Mercy. You are solo tonight. Call if you get anything unusual. Have a quiet one," I said. "Will do," and my voice sounded more confident than I felt. Driving inside the cemetery at night is not like daytime. In the day, you see everything at once. The rows, the statues, the trees. At night, the headlights only catch parts of it. 1 second, it is just grass and stones. The next second, a tall angel or a statue of the Virgin Mary jumps into the beam with blank eyes. And then it is gone again. I drove slow, following the narrow asphalt lane. And I told myself not to stare too hard between the headstones because my mind would start making shapes. I parked by the prefab office, went inside, turned on the lights, fluorescent tubes buzzing overhead. A coffee maker in the corner with an old stained pot, a corkboard with notes about schedules, a list of funerals for the week, a sign that said, "Respect the grounds." The monitor on the desk showed a grid of black and white camera feeds, some static where the old cameras were fuzzy, some clearer. You could see the front gate, the main drive, both mausoleum entrances, the central statue, and a couple of wide shots of the grounds. Nothing moved in any of them except a little grain. I logged in on the sheet with my name, date, 11 p.m., start time, and then I started my first round. First rounds are simple. You walk the loop, check that the fences are intact, make sure no cars are parked where they are not supposed to be, check that mausoleum doors are locked. I took the company flashlight, clicked it on, and stepped back outside. The air hit me harder now, colder, and the fog had thickened in the half hour since I drove in. It was low to the ground, ankle height in some spots, higher in others, like it was pooling in the dips between graves. The lamps along the main path were on old round glass bulbs that threw a yellow light that stopped a few feet out and then just turned into gray. I walked the path, boots crunching on gravel in some sections and making that dull thump on asphalt in others. The sound of my footsteps felt too loud, like the rest of the world was turned down. I checked my phone once, It was 11:18 p.m. I remember that because I took a picture of the central statue to send to my sister as a joke. The statue is a big stone angel with its head bowed and its wings half open, standing on a pedestal in the middle of a circular plot. At night, with the fog, it looked different, but in the picture, it just looked cloudy and grainy, nothing special. She texted back, "Stop, or I will block you," with a laughing emoji. That was the last normal thing. The first wrong detail was so small, I almost ignored it. It was near the old section of the cemetery, the part with the oldest stones, where the dates go back to the early 1900s and the markers are thin and leaning. There is a narrow path that cuts between two rows and leads up to a big oak tree. I'd walked it in the daytime with the older guard. He pointed out a headstone up there with the name of some local family that had a whole row. That night, as I came up that same path, my flashlight caught one of those stones at the edge of the beam. The name on it looked familiar in a way that made my stomach tug. I stepped closer and shined the light right on it. The stone was worn and a little green from age, but the letters were still clear. My last name, Dalton. Same spelling, same little notch on the top of the T where the stone had chipped. Under it, first names I did not recognize, dates way before I was born. It still bothered me though because I could swear that stone did not have my last name on it when I saw it in the day. The older guard would have said something if it did. He liked pointing out weird coincidences. I stood there looking at it too long, feeling that cold spot in my chest where worry starts, telling myself there are lots of Daltons in the world, that stone has probably been there longer than I have been alive. I finally pulled my eyes away, made a note in my head to check the map later, kept walking. "You are fine," I said out loud to myself. My voice sounded small in the fog. The second wrong thing was the sound. It was about midnight by then. I had finished the loop, checked the locks on both mausoleums, and gone back to the office to warm up and drink some coffee. The monitor screen showed nothing but still graves and trees. I listened to the radio for a while, the dispatcher checking in on other units, a guy at a strip mall complaining about a broken back door, stuff that made me feel less alone. The fog outside the office window had thickened so much that after a while I could only see the first row of stones. Everything beyond that was just blank gray. The clock on the wall ticked. At 12:03 a.m., the company line crackled, and the dispatcher said, "Unit 9, status check. You good out there?" And I said, "Yeah, quiet, just fog." And he said, "Copy that," and signed off. The room felt too still. I decided to walk another half loop just to break it up. I took the flashlight, stepped back out. When you first step out into that kind of fog, it feels like stepping into cotton. The light from the office door behind me cut a wedge through it. After a few steps, that light was just a glow behind me. All I could hear at first was the crunch of gravel and the faint hum of the street beyond the fence. Then, as I passed the older part again, I noticed that the sound changed. It is hard to explain. The crunch of my boots on the path stayed the same, but everything else got quiet in this way that did not feel like regular quiet. The distant traffic noise dimmed down like someone was sliding a dial. The little rustle of the tree branches went away. The hum of the city faded. All that was left was the sound of my own breathing and that crunch, crunch, crunch. I stopped walking. The crunch kept going for one step, just one. Like somebody took one more step behind me after I stopped. I turned around fast, flashlight beams swinging through fog. Nothing, just rows of stones fading into gray. I stood there, heart beating faster than it should for such a small thing, telling myself it was an echo, the sound bouncing off stones and coming back. I turned again and kept going, but I started counting my steps in my head, and I swear to you, 3 separate times I stopped and heard one more crunch after I stopped. Just one, close, like right behind my right heel. By the time I made it back to the central circle with the big angel statue, my mouth was dry and my fingers were stiff on the flashlight. "Listen, man," I told myself under my breath. "It is your first night. You are jumpy. That is it." I checked my phone. It said 12:19 a.m. The battery had dropped a little from the cold. My radio was quiet. I started back toward the office. That is when I saw her. You know those gaps between rows where you can see a long, straight shot of stones with the lamps lining the main path behind them? There is one right before you get back to the newer section. A little lane of gravel and grass between 2 older rows. My flashlight swept past it, and I caught movement in the corner of my eye. Just a shape, pale against the dark. I froze, swung the beam back. At first, I thought it was just one of the marble statues, the kind that looks like a person in robes, but it was in the wrong place, too close to the lane, too tall and thin to be one of the child angel statues. My hand tightened on the flashlight. I stepped closer until the beam was steady. The fog made the light soft at the edges, but the center was clear enough. There was a woman standing about halfway down that row, between two headstones. She was facing away from me, toward the far end of the cemetery, head slightly bowed. She wore a long white dress that went down to the ground, maybe a blouse and skirt. It was hard to tell in that light, but it was all white or something close to it. Her hair was dark and hung down past her shoulders. The strangest part at first was how still she was. No shiver, no shift of weight, nothing. Just standing. "Hey," I called out, because that is what you do when you are security and you see someone where they are not supposed to be. My voice sounded too loud in that narrow lane. "Ma'am, we are closed. You cannot be out here right now." She did not move, did not turn. I took a few steps down the lane, gravel under my boots, the fog curling around my legs. My heart was beating hard, but I told myself it was just someone who sneaked in to visit a grave, maybe grieving, maybe confused, and that I just had to get close enough to talk to her, walk her to the gate, write a note in the log. "Ma'am," I said again, closer this time, "did you hear me? We are closed. You need to come up toward the office." My flashlight beam was on her back now. I noticed details. The dress looked old, like not modern style, with sleeves that came down past the elbows and some kind of lace at the cuffs. There was a line of tiny buttons down the back, and the way the fabric hung was wrong for the weather. Any cloth that thin in that damp air should have clung or moved a little. Hers just hung straight. I was close enough now that I should have heard her breathing or shuffling or something, but there was nothing. The traffic noise from outside the fence was gone again. No hum, no distant engine sound, nothing. Just the soft ring in my ears and my own breath. My radio crackled at my shoulder with a little burst of static and made me jump. I reached up, pressed the button, and said, "Unit 9, I have got a possible visitor on the grounds. Female, I am going to escort her out." And the dispatcher's voice came back, faint and broken with static, not like before. I could not make out the words. It sounded like he was underwater. I looked down at the radio, frowned, then looked back at the woman. She had moved, not turned, not stepped. She had moved forward. She was further from me than she had been a second ago, like the distance had stretched. I know that sounds crazy. I know I am the only one who saw it. 1 second she was between two specific stones, the next second she was 3 stones further down, but she had not taken a step. Her posture was exactly the same. Head bowed, arms at sides. My mind tried to tell me I had misjudged the distance. The fog was playing tricks, but my stomach knew better. "Ma'am," I said, and now my voice shook. "You need to stop where you are and turn around so I can see your hands." I heard my training officer's voice in my head saying, "Keep your distance, keep your hands free, stay calm." I took one more step forward, not many, maybe half the length of a grave. The crunch of gravel sounded too loud to me. She moved again. Same way, no shift, no sway. One moment she was in one spot, the next she was further down, like the space between her and the far end had shrunk and I had stayed in the same place. That is when I realized what was wrong with her feet. There were none. I had been telling myself I could not see her feet because of the fog and the way the dress fell, but as my flashlight swept lower, I saw the edge of the dress and the ground under it. There was a small gap between the hem and the grass. Not big, just a few inches, but enough. She was not standing. She was hovering. Not high, not some movie thing way up in the air. Just slightly above the ground, enough that the dress hung straight down and the fog moved under it. My throat went dry. "Listen," I said, more to myself than her. "That is not right." My radio crackled again, louder this time, but it was not the dispatcher's voice. It was just a rush of static, deep and strange, like something pushed through the channel. I lifted it to my mouth out of habit. "Say again?" I managed. The static swelled and then cut off so fast it hurt my ear. I lowered the radio and looked back down the lane. The woman was closer. I do not know how many times she had moved in that second I looked away, but she was close enough now that I could see the side of her face in the edge of the beam. Her skin looked pale, not in a healthy way, but like all the color had been pulled out. Her head was still tipped forward, hair hanging on either side, but I could see one cheek. It was smooth, no lines, no age spots, nothing to tell me how old she was supposed to be. "Ma'am, please answer me," I said. My voice cracked on the last word. "If you need help, we can call somebody." My hand was shaking so hard the flashlight beam jittered. The air around me felt heavy in my ears, like the pressure changed. I became aware of the smell of the place. Not just wet grass now, but that thick scent of damp stone and old flowers, plastic and real, mixed together. For some reason, the smell of the little metal flag holders in the veterans section came into my head, even though they were not near us. My mind was reaching for anything normal. She glided forward again, closer. No foot movement, no shift of the dress, just a smooth slide. The fog did not react right around her. Where it touched her outline, it did not swirl like it did around the headstones. It just stopped. I could see her back fully now. The thin line of her spine under the fabric, the tiny buttons. Her hands were hanging at her sides, fingers straight and stiff. I do not know why, but that part scared me as much as the feet. There was no little bend in them, no natural curve. They looked like they did not know how to be hands. "I am going to come a little closer, okay?" I heard myself say, like I was talking to a nervous dog. "I am not here to bother you, I just need to get you to the gate." My legs did not want to move, but I forced them. 1 step, 2. Each crunch sounded like it would carry for miles. The fog felt thicker around my knees. I could not feel the breeze anymore. It was like the air had become solid. My radio gave one short burst of static, then went dead, the little screen flicking off. I tapped it with my thumb. Nothing. The little green light that shows it is on was out. It had been fully charged at the office. My phone in my pocket buzzed. Once, then stopped. I did not take it out. I could not take my eyes off her. I was maybe 10 or 12 feet away now, close enough that if she had turned, I would have seen her whole face. She did not turn. Instead, her head started to tilt backward. Not in a normal way, not like someone looking up at the sky. It was slow and steady, and did not stop where a neck should stop. The hair slid back off her shoulders, hanging behind. I could see the pale line of her throat, then the underside of her chin, then her mouth. Her mouth was closed at first, then it opened. It opened slow, like she had never done it before and was figuring it out, and it kept opening past what looked comfortable. There was nothing inside it. No tongue, no teeth that I could see, just this dark that felt deeper than a regular mouth. I do not mean to sound dramatic, I am just telling you what I saw. The flashlight beam shook so much I had to steady it with both hands. I waited for a sound because that is what my brain said should come next. A scream, a word, anything. But there was nothing. No sound from her at all. The sound came from my radio instead, from the dead unit at my shoulder. It snapped back on with a blast of noise that made me flinch. It was not the usual static. It was deeper, layered, like a whole lot of sounds all mashed up. For a second I thought I could hear voices in it, not words, but the pattern of speech, like a crowd far away. It made my teeth hurt. I grabbed at the radio to turn it down, my fingers fumbling the knob. It did not change. The volume stayed the same. Her mouth was still open, wider now, the angle of her head tilted so far back it looked wrong, like the neck should have snapped. Her body did not move otherwise. No rise and fall of the shoulders, no shift of weight, just that open mouth and the radio noise. "Stop," I said, to the radio, to her, to both. I do not know. Stop, stop, stop. I hit the power button, the radio stayed on. The static shifted, went higher, then lower, then for 1 second it cut to clear silence and I thought it was over. In that second of silence I heard something else. Footsteps on gravel, behind me, close. Just 2 or 3, like someone rounding the corner of the lane. I spun around, flashlight sweeping. Nothing. Empty path, empty stones. The fog shifted a little in one spot, like something had just passed through it. I turned back to her. She was closer. I do not know how. I did not see her move. But the distance between us was almost nothing now. I could have reached out and touched her if I had been able to make my arm do it. The beam of the flashlight lit her whole front now. Her dress was not as clean as I had thought. There were faint, darker patches near the hem, like old stains. Her face was tilted back so far I could not see her eyes. Only that mouth. Inside it, in the dark, I thought I saw movement, like the static sound from the radio had a shape. "What do you want?" I said. I did not mean to say it, it just came out. Some part of me still thought this was a person, someone who could answer. There was no change in her. The radio gave a short, sharp noise, like a breath. Then a voice came through, but it was not the dispatcher. It was my own voice saying, "Unit 9, status check, you good out there?" In the exact tone I had heard earlier from the office, like someone had recorded me and was playing it back wrong. Then the static flooded back. I saw the little green light on the radio flicker on and off, and my stomach turned, because now I was sure this was not a glitch or interference. Something was using that channel the way it was using the fog and the space in front of me. I took one step back. My boot caught the edge of a small stone marker, and I almost went down. The flashlight beam dipped, slid across her middle, down her legs, under the hem. I saw the ground there, clearly. Wet grass, a small patch of bare earth, no feet, just that 3-inch gap where she hung in the air. Under her, the grass was flat in a perfect circle, like something had been pressing there for a long time. The fog did not cover that circle. It skirted around it. The air in that space looked dry, and I could see the breath from my own mouth drifting around its edge, not into it. I cannot tell you why that image is the one that comes back to me in the grocery store or when I am trying to fall asleep. Not her face, not the mouth, but that clean ring of dry grass in a sea of wet and fog. I took another step back. "I am leaving," I said, out loud, to something that might not care about words at all. "You cannot be here. I cannot be here. I am leaving." My throat felt tight and my eyes were watering from the cold or from fear. I do not know. That was when she finally moved in a way that looked like movement. Her arms lifted, slow, straight out to her sides, palms down. The dress sleeves did not fall right. They stayed close to her arms like they were stiff. Her fingers were still stiff and straight. The radio static pitched higher, like feedback. My ears rang. My vision narrowed for a second. She started to rise. Not fast, not jerky, just up. The hem of the dress came up with her, the gap between it and the ground widening. 6 inches, a foot, more. The fog under her stirred for the first time, not like normal air, but like something heavy was rolling underwater. Her head stayed tilted back, mouth still open. I could not see any weight shift, any balance adjustment. For a second, her body passed right in front of one of the headstones, and I saw the name on it through her. Like my eyes did not know where to focus. The letters blurred and then snapped back. My stomach heaved. My legs finally listened. I turned and ran. I am not going to pretend I walked calmly back to the office, that I kept my training, that I kept my eyes on her. I ran. My boots hammered the gravel and then the asphalt of the main loop. The fog on the main path seemed thinner, like it did not want to cross some invisible line. The static from my radio followed me, dipping in and out. Once, as I ran past the central angel statue, it cut out again, and for a half second, the only sound was the crunch of my steps and another set right behind me, matching stride. Not echo. Echo does not breathe. I heard breathing behind my right ear, close, like someone running along at my shoulder. I did not look. If I had looked and seen someone or seen no one, I think I would have gone down either way. I just focused on the faint glow of the office window ahead. The door was a brighter rectangle in the gray. I hit it with my shoulder, grabbed the handle, yanked it open. Warm light spilled out. The second I crossed the threshold, the breathing behind me stopped. The radio static cut off mid-crackle. The sudden normalcy of the office was almost worse. The hum of the fluorescent lights sounded too loud. The little heater under the desk buzzed. The camera monitor showed 8 calm black and white views of the cemetery. Nothing moving. Not her, not fog, not me. It was like those 30 seconds had not happened anywhere but in my own body. I slammed the door and locked it. I do not know why. The door is flimsy, but it made me feel like there was a line between inside and outside. I stood there with my back against it, breathing hard, heart pounding. My radio screen lit back up by itself. The company call sign scrolled. Then the dispatcher's voice came through. Normal, a little bored. "Unit 9, you still out there? We got a little blip on your signal. Everything good?" I had to swallow twice before I could answer. "Yeah," I said, and my voice sounded thin and high. "Had some interference, I think fog maybe. We are fine." "I am fine." There was a pause. I imagined him looking at the board, seeing my little dot stationary at the office. "Copy," he said. "You are clear until 3, then relief. Call if you need anything." I said copy again and put the radio on the desk like it was something that burned. My hands left sweat marks on the plastic. I stared at the monitor, at each camera angle. I expected to see her in one of them, some white shape between stones, some glitch. There was nothing. The fog looked thinner on the screen, like the cameras did not pick it up much. The little digital clock in the corner of the screen said 12:32 a.m. That whole thing had taken maybe 15 minutes. Less. I poured coffee from my thermos, and it splashed over the edge of the cup because my hands would not stay steady. I burned my tongue on the first sip because I did not wait. The taste brought me back to my body a little. For the next hour, I did not leave the office. I watched the monitors. I made myself write up a short report in the log, but I did not write what really happened. I wrote 12:20 visual on possible trespasser in Section C. Grounds checked, no one present, possible fog distortion, radio interference. I did not write the part about the feet or the mouth or the way the sound came from places it should not. I told myself if I wrote it, it would become more real. I told myself I would forget it if I ignored it. That was not true. Around 1:15 a.m., something changed again. The heater under the desk shut off with a click. It does that sometimes when it cycles. The room cooled a little. No big deal. Then, slowly, the temperature dropped more. I could see my breath in front of me in a thin cloud. The fluorescent lights did not flicker or anything dramatic. The monitor stayed normal. But the air got so cold my fingertips hurt even with my hands wrapped around the coffee cup. I stood up, walked to the little wall thermostat, checked it. It still read the same setting, but the little red light for heating was on solid, like it was trying and failing to keep up. I could hear the unit outside buzzing, but no warm air came. On the monitor, one of the camera feeds fuzzed for a second. Camera 3. That is the view of the old section, the one with the oak tree. The static on the screen cleared almost immediately, but in that 1 second before it did, I saw a shape in the grain. A white smear, tall enough to be a person, near the center of the frame. When the image snapped back, there was nothing there. The grass between the stones was empty. I should have called the dispatcher right then, told him we had some kind of failure, maybe vandalism, asked for another unit. I did not. I told myself it was just fog hitting the lens. The cold in the room settled into my shoulders. My teeth started to chatter even as I told myself I was fine. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I took it out with stiff fingers. It was a text from my sister. "You alive?" I stared at that for a long second. Then I typed back, "Yeah, bored." My hands were shaking so much the phone registered 3 wrong letters, and I had to retype. Before I could hit send, the screen glitched. It went black and then flashed to my camera app without me touching anything. The front camera was on. It showed my face, pale in the office light, eyes a little too wide. Then, for a half heartbeat, it showed the window behind me instead, like it had switched to the back camera on its own. The window glass was dark. On that glass, reflected, was the interior of the office, and behind that, faint, the shape of the lane between stones. It made no sense. The window faces a small hedge and the side of the maintenance shed, not the graves. In that reflection, halfway down the lane, was a white shape. Long, still. Before I could really focus, the screen flipped back to my face. I dropped the phone. It hit the linoleum hard enough to crack the corner of the case. The camera app closed. The battery bar went from 62 to 40 inches one jump. I picked it up, hands clumsy, and turned away from the window without thinking. I did not want to see if there was anything on the other side of that glass. I put the phone on the desk face down. My heart felt like it was beating in my throat. "Enough," I said, out loud, to myself, to the empty room. "You just have to make it to 3. That is it. 3 o'clock, you clock out, you go home, you do not take this job again." Saying it did not change anything. It just gave the fear something to bounce off. At 2:07 a.m., the alarm panel on the wall beeped. A single high chirp. That means a sensor has tripped somewhere on the grounds. I looked at the panel. The little map with zones lit up. A small red light blinked in Zone 4, Mausoleum B entrance. I did not want to go. Every part of me said, call the dispatcher. Say you have a fault, wait for backup. Training said, you check first, then you call. If you call every time a raccoon bumps a sensor, they stop listening. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, heart pounding, breath fogging the air in front of me. And then I grabbed the flashlight and the radio and opened the office door. The cold outside hit me like a wall. The fog was lower now, sitting right at ground height, thick between the stones. The lamps along the main lane glowed like floating orbs. The air did not move. It felt like the whole cemetery was holding its breath. I keyed the radio. Unit 9 responding to alarm at Mausoleum B. I said, voice shaking but words clear. The dispatcher's reply came through crisp this time. Copy, Unit 9, Zone 4. Keep me posted. The normal sound of his voice gave me a little courage. I walked fast along the lane, boots crunching, flashlight beam swinging between the path and the rows to either side. I did not look down the small lanes between stones. I kept my eyes on the main road and the glow ahead from the mausoleum lights. Mausoleum B is a long, low building with stone steps leading up and big metal doors with glass panels. At night, there are 2 lamps by the door that stay on, so that entrance is always lit. As I got closer, I saw that the doors were closed. They looked normal. No broken glass, no shadow in the windows. The alarm panel by the side showed the little red light for Zone 4 still blinking. Something had tripped it. I checked the handle, locked. I stepped back, shining the flashlight over the steps, the ground, the bushes to either side. No sign of anyone. No footprints on the damp stone that I could see. The fog did not settle much near the building, like the light pushed it back. Unit 9, I said into the radio. Doors are secure. No sign of entry. Possible false alarm. The dispatcher said, copy that. I will note it. Normal. That is when I felt it. A patch of air colder than the rest, right around my ankles. The ground under my boots felt like standing on ice for just a second. The rest of the air was already cold, but this spot was different. It had edges. I stepped to the side without thinking, like I had moved out of a puddle. I pointed the flashlight down. There it was again. A circle. A perfect circle of frost on the stone in front of the doors, maybe 3 feet across. The rest of the steps were just damp. That circle was white and rimy, like someone had left a heavy metal barrel full of liquid nitrogen sitting there for hours. I knelt, hand hovering above it. The cold coming off it made the skin on my knuckles hurt. There was no source, no pipe, no vent, just that ring. My radio popped once with a tiny bit of static. In that little burst, I heard a voice, low and strange, but one word was clear enough that it made my stomach clench. Closer. I straightened fast, flashlight beam jumping across the doors. In the reflection of the glass, I saw myself, small and tense, and behind that, faintly, a suggestion of shapes between the graves. One of those shapes was brighter, like a pale smudge. I turned around. Nothing obvious, just rows and fog and lamps. The silence pressed in. The cold circle at my feet stayed. My radio stayed quiet. I backed away from the doors, keeping my eyes on both the steps and the lane. When I got far enough that the frost circle was out of my beam, I turned and walked fast, almost a jog, back toward the office. I did not run this time, but every fiber in me wanted to. By the time I got back inside, my fingers barely worked on the doorknob. The heater had kicked back in a little, but the room felt wrong, like the temperature changes were coming from outside, not the unit. I logged the alarm, wrote unexplained frost patch at entrance, possible sensor malfunction. I did not write what I heard. I did not write the word. At 2:41 a.m., my relief texted me. Running late, man, might be closer to 3:20, he wrote. I stared at that for a long time. Those extra 20 minutes felt like an hour. I thought about asking him to hurry, but what was I going to say? There is something in here using my radio and making circles of cold on the ground. He would have laughed, or worse, he would have taken me seriously, and then this would become my whole life, trying to prove one night was wrong and the rest of the world right. I texted back, it is fine, it was not fine. At 2:53 a.m., the camera for the central lane flickered, just that one. Camera 5. That is the one that looks straight down the main path from the office side, past the Angel, toward the older section. When it flickered back to clear, there was something new in the frame. A round patch of whiteness on the asphalt near the middle of the view. The camera is black and white, so I could not see color, but I knew what it was. Another circle, this one larger, maybe 5 feet across, right where the lane from the older stones meets the main road. That is right where I had been when I first saw her. I leaned closer to the screen. There was no distortion, no obvious trick, just the dark lane, the pale patch, and a faint suggestion of fog. As I watched, the white circle seemed to pulse, not brighter, just sharper, then softer, like my eyes were losing focus and regaining it. My breath fogged the glass of the monitor. I wiped it away with my sleeve. That was when the feeling hit. Not cold this time, not sound, just the absolute, heavy certainty that I was not alone in that little office. It was as clear as if someone had spoken it. I could feel it between my shoulder blades. A weight. I did not want to turn around. I knew where the feeling was centered without looking. The window behind me, the one the phone showed me earlier. "Listen," I said out loud, voice shaking, not caring how it sounded. "I am not here for you. I am just doing my job. I did not ask for this. I am leaving when my relief gets here, and you can do whatever you do without me, okay? I am not coming back." My voice cracked halfway through. The words sounded thin in the cold air. The feeling did not change. It stayed like a hand pressed between my shoulders. On the monitor, the circle stayed sharp. My radio, sitting on the desk, clicked. No static, no voice, just that little click you get when someone keys a mic but does not speak. It clicked again, and again, slow, like a tap. I watched the red transmit light flick on and off without anyone touching it, 3 times. Then it stopped. Then, behind me, on the glass of the window, something tapped, 3 times. Light, fingernail and glass. I did not turn, I could not. My legs would not move and my neck felt locked. My eyes burned. My mind went white, just a loud rush. For a second, I thought I might pass out. The tapping came again, slower. 1, 2. The third did not come. Instead, my radio spoke. Not static, not the dispatcher, a voice, low and flat, using the speaker like it did not care how sound is supposed to work. It did not say my name, it did not say words in any language I know, but the rhythm was like a question. My stomach dropped, because the pattern of the sounds matched the syllables of a phrase I did know. It sounded like "you see me" stretched out and turned inside out. I do not know how to explain it better than that without making it sound more dramatic than it was. It was not loud, it was not theatrical. It was just there. My phone buzzed on the desk. The screen lit up with a notification. Relief. Here. At gate. The spell, if you want to call it that, broke a little. I grabbed the radio with numb fingers and hit the button hard. Unit 9 to dispatch. Relief is here. I am logging off, I said, my voice too loud. The dispatcher answered right away. Copy. Unit 9. Have a good night. The normal tone made my eyes sting. I turned my head slowly toward the window. There was nothing there. Just my reflection and the faint glow of the hedges outside. No face, no woman, no white shape. The tapping stopped. The cold eased off a little, just enough that I felt the sting of return in my fingers. I shut down the monitor in a rush, logged out on the sheet, grabbed my stuff. I did not log the tap. I did not log the radio voice. I walked out of the office and locked the door, and I swear to you the air outside felt warmer than inside for the first time that night. My relief was standing by his car near the side gate, hood up, breath clouding the air. "Man, it is like a freezer out here," he said, laughing, hands jammed in his pockets. "Anything happen?" I looked at him, at his normal face in the dim light, at his regular worn jacket, and I almost said everything. I almost spilled it right there on the gravel. Instead, I heard myself say, "False alarm at the mausoleum. Some interference on the radio. That is it." He nodded, yawned. "Easy money," he said. He did not see the way my hands shook as I passed him the radio. I got in my car, my fingers fumbled the keys. The engine struggled for a second before it turned over, the battery light flickering. The cold had got to it too. I pulled out of the service lane, the tires crunching on the gravel, and drove along the main loop toward the exit. As I passed the central statue, I looked straight ahead. I did not look down the lanes. I did not look at the old section. The fog was thinning with the first hint of dawn light, just a little gray in the east. When I reached the main gate and turned onto the street that runs along the fence, I broke my own rule and looked in through the bars, just once, just for a second. The lamps inside were dimmer now. The headstones were rows of darker shapes. Near the center, by the lane where I had seen her, the grass was darker in a circle. Not bright, not glowing, just a ring where the frost had melted in a different pattern, like something had stood or hovered there longer than it should. I blinked and it was just grass again. I drove home with the radio off. Any noise felt like an invitation. My sister was asleep when I came in. I did not wake her. I stood in the bathroom under too bright light, looking at my face in the mirror, at the way my eyes would not settle. I took off my work shirt and saw a faint mark on the back of the right shoulder, like someone had pressed 4 fingertips there hard enough to leave pale spots. They did not hurt. They faded by that afternoon. I still feel them sometimes when I think about turning my back on that window. That should be the end, right? One bad night, one strange incident. Tell yourself you were tired, you were suggestible. Cemeteries are creepy, radios glitch in fog. People see what they are primed to see. That is what I tried to do. I called off my next scheduled night at Holy Mercy. I asked the boss to put me back on warehouses and parking garages. He laughed and said, "Cemetery too spooky for you?" I said, "The radio system needs work out there." And he shrugged and said he would send someone else. That should have been it, except it did not stop. Not in big dramatic ways. In small, irritating ones that add up until you realize your life shifted when you were not looking. For a while after, every time I closed my eyes in a dark room, I would see that dry circle of grass under the hem of her dress and the way the fog refused to touch it. I stopped walking past the city cemetery in daylight on my way to the bus stop. I started taking the long route around 2 extra blocks just so I would not see the headstones through the trees. If a funeral procession went by while I was driving, I would pull over and pretend to check my phone so I did not have to look at the hearse. My sister noticed after a while. "You do not go to Mom's grave anymore," she said one Sunday when she came back from the cemetery and I had stayed home. I told her I was tired, that work had messed up my sleep, that I would go next time. There has not been a next time. I cannot stand the thought of standing between stones again. A month after that night, I went back to Holy Mercy in the daytime to return a key that had been assigned to me. I did not have to go inside the grounds. I could have left it at the main office drop, but the manager was there and waved me in, and it felt rude to say no. In daylight, the place looked harmless again. The grass was trimmed, the leaves raked, the statues less strange. People were walking around, putting flowers on graves, talking quietly. The fog was gone. The sky was clear. The air had that cold, crisp feel, but not the heavy weight from that night. The manager is an older guy, white hair, neat sweater, that kind. We were standing at the little counter while he updated my file. On the wall behind him were photos of the cemetery, from different years, old black and white shots of the grounds, newer ones in color. One of the newer ones caught my eye. It was a close-up of a grave in the older section, with a wreath and a small picture frame set into the stone. The frame had a photo of a woman in it, dark hair, white dress, not exactly like that night, but close enough that my stomach twisted. "Who is that?" I asked before I could stop myself. The manager glanced back. "Oh, that one," he said. "Old family plot. She passed in the 80s. Family comes by every year like clockwork. Nice folks." He did not say her name. I did not ask. I looked at the dates on the small plaque under the photo. The year of death was 1987. That number stuck in my head like a nail. I remembered birthdays, school years, all the things that happened in my life after that year, and somewhere under all that, the idea that she had been in the ground there longer than I had been alive, and still something with her face, or a version of it, had been moving where it should not. "You okay, son?" the manager asked, noticing my face. "Yeah," I said, "just tired." That is what I say a lot now when people ask, "Just tired." I left the office and walked fast back to my car, keeping my eyes on the asphalt, not the stones. As I passed the lane where I had seen her that night, I had to look up just once. There was nothing there. No circle, no mark. Just grass and stones and a man in a coat visiting a grave 2 rows over, his head bowed. Normal. I almost convinced myself I had built the whole thing up in my head, some half-dream brought on by work stress and fog and too much coffee. Then, as I opened my car door, my radio, which I had left on the seat even though it was off duty, clicked on by itself. The little screen lit up with the company logo, then went blank, then the battery icon flashed, even though I had charged it fully. The speaker gave one short burst of static. In that burst, just as before, I heard something that hit the same pattern in my brain that Closer had. Not a word this time, just a rhythm. 3 short, equal sounds. Tap, tap, tap. Like fingernails on glass, I turned it off and took the battery out. I left the parking lot without looking back through the fence. That was almost a year ago. I have not taken another cemetery shift. When they ask, I say nights are too hard on my sleep schedule. I work warehouses, office parks, anywhere with 4 solid walls and no headstones in sight. I changed my route to work to avoid the street that runs along the cemetery fence. I turned down a family visit to a memorial garden last month and told them I was sick. I will not even go into the floral section of some stores if I can help it, because the smell of cut flowers in a quiet aisle makes my heart beat too fast. Sometimes, when I am driving past any place with stones in rows, even if it is just a landscaping yard or a monument shop, I feel the air get a little colder in the car for a second, like something is reminding me that it knows I am trying to pretend it did not happen. The real problem is not out there though, it is in my head. When I wake up in the middle of the night, which is often now, I hear the crunch of gravel in my mind before I hear my own breathing. I smell wet stone and plastic flowers. I see that ring of frost. If the room is too quiet, I turn the radio on, any station, just to have other voices in the background so I do not listen for the click of the mic or the tap on the window. I keep my phone face down on the nightstand so I do not see any reflections in the black screen. I cannot look at photos of people standing in cemeteries without my skin crawling. Even pictures online make my palms sweat. I do not know what I saw that night. I cannot tell you she was a ghost or a spirit or any word like that. All I know is there was a place for the dead, and in that place, something that should have stayed still did not, and something that should have been underground was above the ground in a way that broke all the small, quiet rules we live by without thinking. You walk on sidewalks, not graves. You talk on radios, not through them. You stand on the ground, you do not hover over it. When those small rules bend, even just a little, your brain does not go back to normal. At least mine has not. So if you are listening to this in your room, in your car, with the lights off, and you think to yourself, it is just a cemetery. It is just stones and names. People rest there, they do not move, they do not notice us. I am not here to tell you you are wrong about all cemeteries. I am just telling you that there is at least one place, one old Catholic graveyard tucked between houses and side streets, where on one fog-heavy night a woman in white did not stay where she was supposed to, and that when her mouth opened nothing came out but the sound that poured into my radio and got into my head and has not left. And I am telling you that if you ever find yourself taking a shortcut past headstones at night and you see a circle of frost where there should not be one, or you hear a click on a speaker with no one on the other end, or you catch, just for a second, the shape of someone hovering a little above the grass instead of standing on it, you need to keep walking. Do not go closer. Do not say you are just tired and it is just fog. Because once you see it clear, once you know it can happen, you cannot unknow it. You will find yourself like me, parked by a cemetery gate in a car that barely starts, talking into a cracked phone at 3 a.m, praying that whatever is listening on the other side of the fence does not learn your name the way it learned mine. The crawling shape under the snow. My name's Mark Hanley. I'm from a little place called Arden Falls out in western Pennsylvania, near the hill where the old Ridgeview Cemetery sits over the town, and I work as the night caretaker there, the one who walks the rows when everybody else is home in bed. I am sitting in my car right now at the bottom of the cemetery drive, right by the metal gate. It is 3 a.m, and the battery light on the dash keeps flickering because this car is on its last legs, and I am talking into a phone with a cracked screen that keeps catching my thumb when I slide it. And I am praying nobody decides to come by and ask me what I am doing, because I do not think I can say this twice. Today was supposed to be normal, man. I woke up at 10 in the morning because I work nights, so my days are kind of upside down. I had the same thing I always have when the paycheck is thin, 2 slices of white bread with peanut butter, and that cheap jelly that never really tastes like the fruit on the label, and 1 cup of coffee that I reused the grounds for, so it was weak and bitter at the same time. I put on the same green work pants I always wear, the ones with the knee-worn shiny, from kneeling to fixed flower holders, and the gray long-sleeve shirt with the Ridgeview patch that has a little bleach spot near the hem from when I cleaned the supply room wrong. I checked the time on my phone at exactly 11:42 before I left the house because I like to know how early I am, and I threw my lunch in a plastic grocery bag, just a ham sandwich and a granola bar and an apple that was soft on one side. The sky looked heavy even then, like the snow they kept talking about on the radio was thinking about it, but nothing was falling yet. I drove up the hill to the cemetery like I always do, past the old brick houses with the sagging porches, past the corner store that sells those little plastic flowers you see on graves, and I pulled in through the gate at 12:03 according to the dash clock. I always check the time because I have to write it on the night shift log sheet in the office. That is just part of the job. Maybe if I had not been so careful with the times all these years, what happened later would not bother me the way it does, but I cannot change that now. Ridgeview is one of those hillside cemeteries they built before people thought about parking lots and straight lines. The whole place is on a slope, graves climbing up the hill in crooked terraces, old stones leaning, newer markers in straight rows down near the bottom where it is easier to mow. There are a few big trees up near the top that block the moon on clear nights. And in the day you can see the whole town from up there, the church steeple, the water tower, the school. At night it is just a scattered mess of lights. My job is simple, on paper. I do the afternoon into night shift, make sure no one is hanging around after dark, that should not be. Lock the little chapel and the maintenance shed, check for fallen branches or things that could cause problems, and keep an eye on the newer sections where families still come a lot. In winter it is mostly quiet. Snow keeps people away. You do your walks, you drink your coffee, you sign the sheet every hour to say you checked. That is what it should be. When I got in today, the ground supervisor, Mr. Collins, was still there in the office. He had his coat half on and the weather report on his phone. He said, "Looks like you might get that snow after midnight. Mark, if it gets bad, just stay in the office as much as you can and do shorter rounds." He laughed when he said it, because I am the one who has to walk the hill while he is home in his recliner. I signed the log for my start time, 12:10, because we always round, and I checked the little board with the burial list. 2 new ones this week in the newer section, row J, plots 14 and 15, same family name. I had filled in the temporary markers myself the day before. Their names were still fresh in my head, the dates too. That matters later. The first part of the shift was nothing, man. Really. I walked the lower rows at 1, crunching gravel, checking the wreaths had not blown over. I went up the middle road to the old part at 2, looked at the big statues that always creep new guys out, but do nothing for me anymore, just stone with bird droppings. I went back to the office, wrote my times down in the book, ate half my sandwich, left the apple for later, stared at the little TV in the corner with the volume down. Snow started around 10 at night, these soft flakes that did not look like much at first, just dust on the tops of the stones. By 11 it was steady. By midnight it was a real storm, the kind where the wind pushes the snow sideways and the air tastes like metal when you breathe in. The security cameras on the monitor in the office started to look grainy because of it, white fuzz moving across the picture. We have 4 cameras outside, 1 on the front gate, 1 on the lower section by the newer plots, 1 up near the old mausoleum, and 1 on the maintenance shed that gets half the parking lot in the shot too. I was supposed to do 1 last full round around midnight because that is when the town cops stop driving by as often and the place is all mine. I put on my heavy coat with the busted zipper, my knit hat that smells like sweat and old wool, and my gloves with the hole in the right thumb. I checked my phone. It said 12:07. I wrote that in the log, because that is the time I started my round. I grabbed the big flashlight from the peg by the door, the one that has a beam strong enough to cut through snow most of the time, and I stepped outside. The snow hit my face like pins right away. The parking lot was already covered in an inch or two, no tire marks except mine and the tracks from Colin's leaving. The gate stood open, big iron thing with peeling black paint, and the road up into the cemetery looked like a white ribbon already. I walked the lower loop first, because that is what we always do. You check the freshest graves more often. That is the rule. Families complain if they think you are not watching. The newer section is down near the bottom of the slope, straight rows, laser-etched pictures on some of the stones, the kind with photographs and little solar lights. The snow was sticking to the flowers, making little white hats on the plastic roses. My boots sank with each step, crunch and squeak, crunch and squeak. The beam of the flashlight showed my breath in front of me. It was so quiet that I could hear the snow hitting my coat. That is the first thing that felt off, and I should have paid more attention. You can usually hear the town even at night. A faraway car, somebody yelling, a dog barking. The storm swallowed everything. I walked the rows, checked the newer markers, checked the 2 fresh ones in row J that had been done that week. Same family name, father and son, car wreck. That is what Collins had said. They had those temporary plastic frames with the printed insert until the real stone came in and the snow had stuck to the plastic so you could not see the names unless you wiped them off. I ran my glove over them, not really thinking, just habit. And I remember those names clear as anything, first and last, and the dates. The older one had been born in 1976, the younger in 2004. That matters too. I moved on. The snow kept coming. It was up over my boot soles now. When I finished the lower section, I cut up the middle drive toward the older part. That road curves a little, and the sides drop away into rows of stones that climb the hill. There's a big oak tree near the top, split at the trunk, and when the wind blows, it creaks in a way that sounds like a door sometimes. I remember thinking, I hope the branches did not come down in the storm, because I did not want to be out there cutting limbs at 3 in the morning. There were drifts starting already, little piles of snow building on the upwind side of stones, making them look like they were wearing blankets. I walked up to the crest, around the old family plots with the rusted iron fences, past the mausoleum where nobody has visited in years, past the 2 benches where people sit in the summer. The snow up there was deeper, maybe 4 inches already, and the wind hit harder. I tugged my hat down and turned my back to it when it gusted. I told myself to hurry, to just get the check done and get back into the warm office. Then, on the way down the far side of the hill, I saw it. At first I thought it was just where somebody had driven or walked earlier, some marks in the snow. The flashlight beam hit the ground between 2 rows and showed a long, low trail, about a foot wide, pushing through the fresh snow in a smooth line. It did not look like footprints. There were no individual marks, no heel and toe, no boot tread, no animal prints, just a long path where the snow had been shoved aside from the middle, a ridge on either side like something had dragged itself along on its belly. It ran between the stones, weaving a little, then turned and went between 2 more. I froze, literally, and not just stood there with my breath puffing in front of me and the snow hitting my face and my brain trying to sort it into something normal. Maybe someone dragged a sled, I thought. Maybe a kid came up here earlier, before the storm really started, and pulled something around. But the snow was too fresh. I had walked this same way less than an hour before, and there had been nothing. No sled marks, no nothing. The trail looked new, edges sharp, no snow blown over it yet. I followed it with my light. It went between the stones, passed near one of the older markers from the 1,920 seconds, then another. It did not go straight. It curved around some graves and went close to others, like whatever made it was choosing, not just sliding at random. My heart started beating harder, not racing yet, but heavy, like each beat was pushing against something. I told myself maybe it was an animal, a big one, belly dragging. A deer that had fallen, a dog, but the width was wrong, too, even. No hoof marks, no paw prints on the sides, just that central channel. I almost turned back right then. I really did. I almost said, you know what? The snow is bad. I am going inside like Colin said I could, and I am logging that the weather was too rough to do a full round. But something in me did not like the idea of leaving those tracks there unanswered. I kept thinking, what if a kid actually is out here, crawling around, or some drunk who fell, and I just go inside like nothing is going on, and in the morning someone finds a body under a drift. I would not be able to live with that. So I followed the trail. It led down the slope a little, between rows, closer to the newer section again, but higher up. The snow came up past my ankles now, and every step was work. The beam of the flashlight shook a little because my hand was starting to feel the cold through the glove. The trail went past a stone I know well, a woman who comes every Sunday in summer to sit by it, and I remember thinking she would not like the idea of something crawling past. It sounds stupid, thinking about that while you are scared, but that is how the mind works. It jumps. The trail turned again and headed toward Row J from the upper side, not on the road, just cutting diagonally between graves. I could see, even before I got close, that it went right along the line of the newest burials. Not crossing them, circling them, it swerved around one stone, then dipped close to another, like it was tracing a pattern. When I got down near the bottom again, I stopped and just looked. From where I stood, I could see maybe 6 or 7 of those trails in the snow, all the same width, all with that same look, like something big and flat had pulled itself along. They were not all connected. Some started between stones and ended between others. No footprints leading to them, no footprints leaving. The ones that did connect made this looping path that went around the newest graves, not the old ones. The older rows were just covered in smooth snow. The newer ones had been circled, traced. My stomach did a little flip. I felt it. That first drop of wrongness, like when you miss a step in the dark. I had walked those rows an hour before, and there had been nothing. Nobody had driven in after me. I would have seen the lights. The gate was in my line of sight most of the time, and the monitors back in the office would have beeped if the front camera picked up motion. I told myself maybe some of this happened before my round, that I just had not seen it in the half-light, that I was making more of it than it was. Still, I took my phone out and checked the time. It said 12:28. Snow on the screen tried to stick. I wiped it off with my thumb. I thought about calling Collins, but I pictured him in bed, groaning, telling me to stop jumping at shadows. So I put the phone back in my pocket and kept following the trail closest to me. It ran right along the back of Row J. When I got to the 2 freshest graves, the father and son, the trail did a loop, a full circle around both, close enough that it had brushed the little plastic stands the temporary markers were in. One of them had been pushed a little crooked, the printed name, Tilt Now, off center. I could see where the snow had been pressed harder there, deeper, like whatever had passed by had paused a second or shifted its weight, if you can call it that. I bent down and put my glove on the snow right beside it. The surface was smooth and hard, crusted, but when I pressed, my fingers broke through into the softer powder underneath. The channel itself was deeper, closer to the grass. I pulled my hand back, heart thudding, and stood up fast. That was when the beam of my light caught motion. Not up on the hill, not in the trees, under the snow. Just beyond the circle around those 2 new graves, maybe 10 feet away, the smooth white surface of the ground rose up in a line, slow, like someone underneath was lifting their back against a sheet. It was not much, just a long, low swell, but it was moving, crawling, pushing through the snow right to left. The top of it shuddered a little where the snow slid down the sides. It left a deeper trail behind as it went, the same width as the others I had been following. I just stood there. Man, I want to tell you I ran straight away, but I did not. For a second, my brain would not accept what my eyes were seeing. Snow drifts, settling, maybe the wind. Those are the words that went through my head, even though the wind was hitting my face from the other direction and nothing else was moving like that. The shape kept going, slow but steady, like something huge was pulling itself along just under the surface, careful not to break through. It went between 2 stones from last year, made a little curve, then straightened out. My hand started to shake so bad the flashlight beam jumped. I said, out loud, "No one is under there. There is no tunnel. There is nothing there," like saying it could make it so. But the swell in the snow kept moving. It did not sink back into flatness. It changed direction a little, almost like it had noticed me, and headed down the road toward where I was standing. My body did not move for a second. Then everything caught up. I stepped back so fast my heel hit the base of a stone and I almost went down. The flashlight slipped in my glove, but I did not drop it. I clenched it so tight my knuckles hurt. The shape under the snow did not speed up or slow down. It just came on, steady, heading toward the space right in front of me. I could see the snow pushing up higher as it got closer, a long oval ridge, maybe 1.5 feet high in the middle now, narrowing at the ends. It did not look like any animal I know. I could not see any definition, just that bulge and the trail behind it. My heart was hammering in my throat. I took another step back, and another, my boots punching holes in the fresh snow, and the shape kept coming. I do not know what I thought it would do if it reached me, burst up and grab my legs, or slide past, or vanish. I did not want to find out. When it was maybe 3-4 feet away, I turned and started moving fast toward the main drive. Not a full run yet, more like that fast walk you do when you are trying not to look like you are running. I swung the light ahead of me to watch for stone bases under the snow. Behind me, I heard something, a sound so soft I almost missed it under the wind. It was like a dragging, like something heavy being pulled through wet cloth. I glanced back. The shape under the snow had shifted direction again. It was no longer heading for where I had been standing. It was angling to follow the path I was taking, the ridge turning, the snow lifting and falling in that slow wave. That is when the fast walk turned into a run. I'm not a young guy, and running uphill in growing snow in a big winter coat is no joke, but fear will give you more air than you think. I ran between rows, cutting across the hill toward the central road, trying not to trip over the hidden bases of stones. The beam of the flashlight jerked with my steps, lighting up names and dates in flashes. I did not look at them. I did not want to see any dates that did not make sense. All I heard was the crunch of my boots and that dragging sound behind me. Keeping pace, not rushing, just steady. I risked another look back. In the half-light, I could see the long bulge under the snow following the path I had made, like it was tracking the holes my boots left. It was closer than it should have been. I had gone maybe 30 feet, but it had closed the gap instead of falling behind. The snow in front of it lifted in a slow wave, then settled as it passed, leaving that same deep trail behind. No footprints around it, no disturbance except what was right over its path. I hit the main drive and turned down it, slipping a little on the packed snow. The road curves, like I said, and as I followed it, I realized something else that made my stomach twist. The other trails I had seen on the hill, the ones I had thought were old, were changing. When I had walked past them the first time, they had been still just marks. Now, out of the corner of my eye, I saw fresh ridges in a few of them. Like more than one thing under the snow had started to move, heading different directions between the rows, some parallel to me, some angling toward the newer section again. The pattern was not random. It was like watching someone trace lines on a paper you cannot see the full shape of yet. I told myself not to think about it. Just get to the bottom. Get to the office. Get a door between you and it. The wind hit me harder on the road, full in the face, making my eyes water. Snowflakes stung my cheeks. I could feel the cold in my lungs. The flashlight beam bounced off the snow so bright I had to tilt it down. The parking lot lights by the office were just a blur through the storm, but they were there, a yellowish glow. I locked onto them like a lifeline and kept going. The dragging sound did not get louder, but it did not fade either. It was right on the edge of hearing, like when someone is whispering in the next room. When I reached the bend where the oak tree stands, the one that creaks, the sound of the branches moving mixed with it and made my skin crawl. For a second, I thought I heard something else in there too, a kind of scraping rhythm, like claws on stone under the snow. I did not stop to listen closer. I came down the last stretch of the road, fast, cutting off to the right near the lower rows to get to the office quicker. The snow in the lot was deeper now, up to mid-shin in some places where it drifted. The office is a small brick building right across from the front gate. One door, one window, same place I had left from 20 minutes before. I grabbed the handle with a glove that was slick from snow and yanked it open, half falling inside. The warmth hit me in the face, the dry heater air harsh after the cold. I slammed the door behind me and turned the deadbolt out of habit. Even though I knew if something could move under snow like that, a bolt would not mean much. Still, it made me feel like I had done something. I stood there in the little front room, panting, snow melting off my coat in little streams, heart pounding in my ears. The office clock on the wall ticked in that slow plastic way. The fluorescent light overhead hummed. For a moment it was just me and the normal stuff. The metal filing cabinets, the coffee maker, the cheap chairs. Then I heard it. At first I thought it was the heater, Sometimes when it kicks in, the vents knock. But this was not that. It was coming from outside the window, low on the wall. A soft, dragging sound, like something heavy rubbing against the brick. It moved along the base of the wall, from left to right, steady. I shut off the heater to be sure. The hum died. The dragging stayed. I did not want to look. Man. Every part of me wanted to stay in the middle of that room and pretend it was just my imagination. But I walked to the window anyway, slow, flashlight still in my hand even though the room light was on. The window sits high on the wall, level with my chest. The bottom half is brick below it on the outside, then the snow would be piled up against it on the inside of the lot. I wiped the fog off the glass with the side of my glove and peered out. All I could see at first was white, the parking lot lights reflecting off the swirling snow. Then, right up against the glass at the bottom edge, the snow rose, a long swell pressing against the window from outside, pushing the powder up in a curved line. It was the same shape as on the hill, that long oval, but now it was vertical against the wall. It slid along the base of the window, pushing the snow as it went, slow, steady, right under where I was standing. The brick made a faint scratching sound as whatever was under there moved against it. I stepped back fast, heart in my throat. The dragging sound followed, moving beneath the floor now, like it had gone under the building. The whole office felt like it was sitting on top of something that was awake and moving. I backed toward the interior door, the one that leads to the console room where the cameras and the switch panel are. My hand found the knob, and I went through, shutting it behind me and locking it, as if that extra thin door would help. The console room has no windows, just the glow of the monitors and the hum of the equipment. The 4 camera feeds were up on the screen in front of me, each showing a slice of the cemetery under the storm. The front gate camera showed the lot and the road, snow blowing in sheets. The one on the lower section showed the new rows, now almost covered, the markers just bumps. The mausoleum camera showed mostly white, the hill blurred. The maintenance shed camera showed the plow parked beside it, half buried already. As I watched, the image on the lower section camera flickered. A line appeared in the snow between 2 rows, a darker groove. Another line crossed it at an angle. The camera adjusted, refocused, like it was having trouble deciding what was important. More lines appeared, all at once, like someone had drawn them with a finger on top of the picture. They were the trails, the ones I had seen out there, but there were more now, crossing, looping, circling certain graves. The resolution is not great, it is a cheap system, but you could still see the pattern forming. Circles around the newest stones, curves that doubled back to them. The snow itself was moving in faint bulges along some of those lines, the same slow crawling shape I had watched near Roje. I swallowed hard. My throat was dry, even though the rest of me was still damp from the snow. On the front gate camera, the snow on the lot looked like a flat sheet at first. Then, in the far corner near where I had parked, something lifted the surface a little, just for a second, then flattened it again. It was like watching something swim just under ice. I told myself it could be the wind, the plow blades shifting, anything, but the pattern on the lower section feed did not look like wind. It looked like intention. I reached for the phone on the desk, the landline, thinking I would call Collins, or maybe the police. My hand hovered over the buttons. What was I supposed to say? Come up to the cemetery in a blizzard because I think the snow is moving wrong. Still, I picked up the receiver. There was dial tone. That simple sound made me feel a little better. I started punching in Collins's number from memory. I had hit 3 digits when the dial tone cut out. For a second, there was nothing, not even static. Then a low sound came through the earpiece, like the hush of the storm, but heavier. Under it, I heard something that made my hand go cold on the plastic. It was the same dragging rhythm I had been hearing outside, only closer, moving from one side of my head to the other in the handset, like the line itself was moving. I pulled the phone away from my ear. The sound got fainter, but did not stop. The line was still open, no dial tone, no voice. I set the receiver back in the cradle, hand shaking, and it clicked into place, cutting off the noise. The room felt smaller then. The monitors seemed too bright. I checked the time on the digital clock by the door. It said 12:31. I had started my round at 12:07. There was no way everything I had done, all the walking, the running, the watching, had only taken 24 minutes. It felt like an hour had passed, at least. I pulled my phone out again. It said 1:16. Same room, 2 clocks, 2 different times. The phone matches the world. The wall clock is cheap. That is what I told myself, but it still made my stomach twist. I went back to the monitors because I did not know what else to do. The lower section feed was worse. The pattern of trails was clearer now. The camera angle is high, so you can sort of see the layout of the rows. The trails under the snow had made loops around the newest graves, and then branched out in lines that connected them to a few older stones, almost like a web. The snow on top of those lines was rising and falling in little pulses, like something was crawling back and forth, slowly. The parts of the hill with the oldest graves, the ones nobody visits much anymore, were quiet, smooth snow. It was just the newer section that was active, the plots with fresh dates, the ones that still get flowers. The camera on the mausoleum showed something too now. At first I thought it was just a drift sliding off the roof, but the snow at the base of the stone wall on one side was lifting, pressing against the marble, then lowering, then lifting further along, like something was moving beside it under the surface, tracing the base. The dragging sound came back, faintly, not through the phone this time, but through the wall, or the floor. I could not tell. It seemed to move from one side of the room to the other, slow, like it was circling the office from underneath. I felt ridiculous standing there, a grown man listening to the ground, but I could not help it. Every time it passed under my feet, my calves tightened. I wanted to leave. That is when the lights flickered. Just once, a quick blink, but the room went dark for a heartbeat, and the monitors all went black, then came back. In that instant of darkness, I felt something like pressure in my ears, the way it feels when you drive up a mountain too fast, and I smelled wet earth, strong, like fresh dug soil in spring, even though everything outside was frozen. Then the humming fluorescent tube came back on, and the monitors rebooted, one by one. When the picture returned, it was worse again. The lower section camera showed the snow on top of the newest graves disturbed, the smooth coating broken into ripples and little mounds, like something had pushed up from underneath and settled again. The trails connecting them were deeper, darker lines. On one of the newest graves, the father, the snow over the center of the plot was lower than the snow around it, a shallow oval depression, as if something heavy had sunk down there from above, or something within had shifted. The son's plot next to it had a long ridge at the head, right where the marker was. As I watched, the plastic temporary marker tilted a little more, though there was no wind strong enough to do that, not through all that weight of snow. The front gate camera made me feel worse. The snow along the inside of the fence line was braced up in those same ridges, like whatever was moving under there had reached the edge and was moving back and forth along it, feeling the boundary. Occasionally one bulge would stop and swell a little higher, pressing against the fence posts, then sink down and move on. The dragging sound under the building stopped. For a moment there was silence, except for the faint hiss of the storm. Then there was a new sound, a soft tap on the back wall of the console room, near the floor. Then another, a foot to the right. Then another further along. It was like someone was knocking low, moving as they went. My imagination jumped to images I do not want to describe, hands testing the wall from the other side, not stone hands, not any hands I know. I backed away from the wall until my shoulders hit the opposite one near the door. The heater in the front room kicked on again because the temperature must have dropped when the power flickered, and the vent in the ceiling started blowing. The normal noise made the weird ones stand out more, not less. I thought about leaving the building, getting in my car, driving down the hill, and not coming back. But to do that, I would have to go out into the lot, through the snow that was moving, in ways it should not move. I am not proud of this, but I froze there for a while, doing nothing, just watching the monitors like they were going to give me an answer. I do not know how long I stood like that. Long enough for my legs to start hurting. Long enough for the clock on the wall to say 12:36 when my phone said 2:1. The two sets of numbers drifted further apart the longer I stayed. At some point, something changed outside that forced me to move. On the lower section camera, the patterns in the snow slowed. The little pulses along the trails stopped. The bulges at the base of certain stones sank down and did not rise again. For a minute, the whole section looked like a normal snow-covered field again. Just small humps where the stones were, a smooth blanket over everything. The dragging sound under the building had stopped with the tapping. It was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that means something is holding its breath. Then, on the front gate camera, right in the middle of the lot, the snow rose up in a straight line, starting from the near edge of the frame, heading directly toward the office door. It was like a finger being drawn under a sheet, slow, purposeful. The ridge was higher than before, a full 2 feet maybe, and the snow on top of it slid off the sides as it moved, falling back in little cascades. It did not weave, it did not circle graves. It took the shortest path between where it started and where I was. The dragging sound came back with it, louder now, right under the front room. I could hear it even through the door. Scrape, pull, steady as somebody climbing stairs. I do not know what made me do what I did next, instead of just hiding in that room. Maybe it was the feeling that if I let it reach the door without seeing it, without trying to understand, it would be worse. Maybe some foolish part of me still thought there would be an explanation. Something human, something I could call somebody about. I unlocked the console room door and stepped back into the front office. The heater blew warm air that smelled a little burnt. The lights were steady now. The sound under the floor was right below me. I walked to the front window again, my boots squeaking on the cheap linoleum. My hand left damp prints on the glass as I wiped a clear patch. Outside, the snow was falling less heavily now, the flakes bigger and slower. The lot was covered in a thick layer that had smoothed over most of the lumps. But right in the center, a ridge was moving, heading toward the building. It was just like on the camera, a long hump in the snow pushing forward, leaving a deep, dark line behind it. It stopped about 6 feet from the office wall. For a second it sat there, the top of the ridge shuddering like something under it was adjusting. Then, instead of moving toward the door, it started to sink. The snow sagged in from the top, filling the space where the ridge had been until there was just a shallow dip. The dragging noise stopped. I held my breath without meaning to. The room felt too small, like the walls were leaning in. From under the window, down low, where the brick foundation is, I heard a faint scratching, like something pushing at the mortar, then nothing. I stayed by that window for I do not know how long, waiting for something else to happen, but the snow outside stayed still. After a while, the heater cycled off again. The silence made my own breathing sound too loud in my ears. I checked the clocks again, because I could not stop. The wall clock said 12:41. My phone said 3:12. I know what you are thinking. Power blip. Cheap clocks, bad reception, storm messing with stuff. I would tell myself the same thing if I was hearing this from someone else. But the worst part is what I saw when I finally worked up the nerve to rewind the camera footage. I went back into the console room, sat down in the stiff desk chair, and started scrolling back through the front gate feed to when I had first come out from my midnight round. There I was, a little figure in a dark coat, walking across the lot toward the lower section, beam of my flashlight cutting through the snow. The timestamp at the bottom said 12:08. I let it run, watched myself disappear between the rows on the lower section camera. I watched the snow deepen, the storm thicken. I watched myself come back down the hill quicker, then run the last stretch to the office and dive through the door. The timestamp said 12:22 when I went in. That part at least matched the wall clock, not my phone. Then I watched the snow in the lot. For a few minutes, nothing. Just storm. Then the first ridge appeared near the far side, moving slowly between rows in the lower section. On the screen, with that detached look, it almost did not seem real, like a trick of the camera. But when the ridge got closer, the pixels in the area around it started to crawl, like the sensor did not want to decide what was snow and what was not. The timestamp ticked along, second by second. When the ridge reached the middle of the lot and turned toward the office, the picture stuttered. A frame skipped. The time jumped backward 1 second, then forward 3. The ridge blurred, then sharpened. When it stopped outside the window, the pixels at the base of the office wall went almost black for a second, like there was a shadow there that did not match anything you could see in the physical world. I scrubbed forward to the moment the lights had flickered in the office. On the camera, the whole scene went white for a fraction of a second. Not black, white, like the exposure had blown out. When the image came back, the ridge was gone and the lot was smooth. That is not the part that really got me, though. That came when I checked the camera aimed at the lower section around the time I had first seen the moving snow by row J. I rewound to when the trails had started to appear, those long lines. Then I froze the frame and zoomed in as much as the cheap software allows on the two newest graves, the father and the son. The date on the father's temporary marker was smeared by the snow on the recording, but you could still see the year if you knew it. The son's was a little clearer, or that is what I thought. When I zoomed all the way in and paused the video at the moment the ridge under the snow had looped around them, the numbers looked wrong. It is hard to explain, but the year on the son's marker, which I knew was supposed to be 2004 to 2024, looked like 2004 to 2026 on the pause. I blinked, leaned closer. When I hit play, the snow in the picture shifted and the marker shook, and for a few frames, the numbers blurred. When it steadied again, the year was back to 2024. I rewound and paused at the same point. 2026 again, clear as anything, 2 and 6, like the date of death had jumped ahead. I checked the physical log, where we write down the details. It still said 2024. I checked the printout in the binder. Same. Only the paused video frame showed that change. I know cameras glitch, numbers can look fuzzy, but my eyes keep telling me what they saw, and my head cannot shake it. I stopped the playback and just sat there, the glow of the monitors making everything else in the room look gray. The dragging noise had not come back. The storm outside had settled into a steady, softer fall. For a few minutes, it felt like maybe the worst had passed. I almost convinced myself I had overreacted, that it was some weird mix of wind and drifting snow and tired eyes. Then the motion alert beeped on the lower section camera. The system has this little feature where a box pops up when it detects movement in certain zones. Usually it is a stray cat or a branch. The box lit up around row J. I tapped the live feed. At first, I thought the camera was frozen. The entire section was a smooth field of snow. The stones were just bumps. The trails I had seen were gone, filled in. Then, right over the spot where those two newest graves were, the snow sighed downward, just the slightest bit, like something under it was exhaling. The little box jumped, tracking the motion. No footprints approached, no animals. Just that subtle sink. Then, just above the sunken spot, the snow rose in a line maybe 3 feet long, not as high as before, but straight, pointing up the hill toward the old part. It held for a full second, like a finger or an arm under a sheet pointing the way, then relaxed and flattened again. The motion box flashed once more, then disappeared as the system stopped seeing anything it could classify. That was enough. I shut off the monitor. I shut off the heater. I grabbed my coat and my phone and my keys, and I walked out of that office without doing another round. I know I should not have done that, leaving the place unwatched, but I could not stay in that room one more second. The air felt like it was sitting on my chest. When I stepped outside, the snow hit me, but it felt better than the inside. Cold, real, simple. My car was a big white lump with only the side mirror showing. I waded over, brushed enough snow off the handle to yank the door open, tossed my stuff in, and climbed inside. For a second, sitting there with the door shut, the inside of the car felt like a different planet, quiet and small. I started the engine. It turned over slow, that tired grinding sound, and for a second I thought it would not catch. Then it did. The battery light flickered, went solid, flickered again. I put the heater on low, my hands shaking on the dial. I looked up at the cemetery drive. The gate was open, like always at night. The road up into the graves was just a white ramp vanishing into the dark. The idea of driving up there again, even just to do a quick look with the headlights, made my stomach drop. I did not. I put the car in reverse, backed carefully onto the lane, and pointed the nose downhill toward town. As I passed the entrance, I made the mistake of glancing to the side, just once. The headlights washed over the nearest stones, their tops just visible above the snow. For a second, in that moving light, I thought I saw one of the long ridges under the snow lift and settle between two of them, but I told myself it was the wind pushing a drift. I kept driving. I did not look in the rearview mirror until I reached the bottom of the hill and turned onto the main road. Even then, I half expected to see the snow from the cemetery lot pushing out through the gate onto the street, like water overflowing a dam. It was just dark behind me. I drove home without turning the radio on because I could not stand the idea of catching static and hearing that dragging rhythm layered in. When I got back to my duplex, I sat in the car for a long time with the engine off, listening to the tick of the cooling metal. I could still feel the give of the snow under my boots, the way it had lifted under the window. I checked the time on my phone. It said 3:47. I checked the cheap wall clock inside when I finally went in. It said 1:09. I stood there in the doorway, holding my coat, staring back and forth between them like an idiot. Then I set the clock to match the phone, because the world follows the phone now, not the other way around. That was last night. I went back to work anyway today, because what else am I supposed to do? Bills do not stop because the ground moves wrong. When I walked into the office, Collins was there again, going over paperwork. He said, kind of offhand, that the storm had been something that the plow guy said the hill was a mess. I asked him if anything had happened during the night, any calls, any alerts from the security company. He shook his head, said no, quiet as a grave, then laughed at his own joke. He asked me why the log had a gap, why there was no final round noted. I told him the storm had been too heavy, that I stayed in the office like he said. He seemed satisfied with that, just told me to make a note in the book next time. I thought about asking him to come up with me and walk the lower section in daylight, to look at the snow. Instead, I went up alone. The plow had cleared the main drive by then, pushing the snow up in banks on either side. The sections between the rows were still untouched, white and level. When I stepped off the cleared path into the newer section, my boots sank deep into snow that was not packed, not shaped like it had been crawling. No trails, no ridges, just a smooth surface. I went straight to Roje. The two new graves looked like any others under snow. Small humps, a little higher than the older ones beside them, but nothing strange. The temporary markers stood straight, their plastic frames stiff in the cold. I wiped the snow off the inserts with my glove. The father's name and dates were the same as yesterday. The son's, too. Year of death, 2024, not 2026. I checked twice. My heart felt like it was beating in my throat again. I walked up and down the section looking for any sign of the trails I had followed. Nothing, no deep lines, no disturbed patches, no depressions that might mean something had sunk. The only marks in the snow were my own footprints and some from the day crew near the main road. If I had not seen the footage, if I had not heard the dragging, if I had not watched the snow lift under the window, I might have convinced myself I had dreamed the whole thing. But when I went back to the office and tried to pull up the recordings from the night before, the files for the hours between midnight and 3 showed as corrupted. Little red exclamation marks next to them on the list. I clicked one. It would not play. I called the tech number we have on the sticker by the monitor, asked the guy if there had been an outage. He said the system had rebooted during the storm, that sometimes the hard drives hiccup when the power flickers, that we might have lost some footage. He sounded bored. I almost told him that I had played those clips just a few hours earlier and watched things that did not make sense, but I stopped myself. He would not believe me. He would file a ticket, clear a log, move on. The only proof I have now is in my own head and in this messed up feeling in my chest when I think about snow. I am parked by the gate tonight instead of sitting in the office, phone in my hand, because I could not make myself go all the way up the drive yet. I keep the engine off most of the time to save the battery, but I turn it on now and then to run the heater when my hands go numb. I watched a light blink up on the hill a little while ago, just once. Near the old mausoleum, a kind of pale glow that moved between two trees and then was gone. It could be a reflection from town or some kid messing around, but I do not think so. The snow has started again, little flakes that swirl in the headlights when I check the rear view. I catch myself listening for that dragging sound under the tires, under the floor of the car, under the whole hill. I know I should go up there and do my job. Walk the rows, check the stones, make sure nothing has fallen. But every time I reach for the door handle, I remember the way the snow rose in that long line outside the office, headed straight for me, and how the year on that marker jumped ahead in the pause footage like time itself took a misstep. I have not gone to any funeral since I took this job. You would think working here would make you more used to it, but it did the opposite. I send flowers when I have to, but I do not stand by open graves anymore. I do not trust the ground. When I drive past other cemeteries now, even small ones by churches, I turn the radio up just a little enough to drown out any sound that might come through the tires. If there is snow on the ground, I look straight ahead, not at the fence line. I find myself memorizing the dates on stones I see in daylight, just quick glances, then checking them again when I drive back past to make sure they did not change. I know that sounds crazy. I know most people would say I am letting a storm night get to me. Maybe they are right. All I can tell you is what it felt like, standing out there in that snow with the whole town asleep below the hill and something under the surface moving between the graves, circling the newest ones like it had business with them, and then feeling it come for the office, for the one warm place left up there. I keep thinking about those long trails, how some of them started and ended between stones with no footprints leading in or out, like whatever made them does not need to come from anywhere we understand. I keep thinking about that little dip in the snow over the freshest grave when the motion alert went off, like something settling in deeper or something else pressing down from above. And I keep thinking about that moment when the snow under the window rose like a shape trying to get as close to me as it could without breaking through, and how my own breath fogged the glass on my side at the same time. The world is not supposed to do that. Snow is supposed to fall and pile and melt. It is not supposed to crawl. Dirt is supposed to sit and hold what we put in it. It is not supposed to breathe. I swear to God, man, I am not trying to make this into a story. I am just trying to get it out of my head before the next round I have to walk up that hill. The battery light on my dash just came on again. The clock on the radio says 3:1. My phone says 4:19. I do not know which one to believe anymore. All I know is that there is a cemetery behind me on this hill, and when the snow gets deep enough and the night gets quiet enough, something under there starts to move, and it knows the difference between the old stones and the ones with fresh dates. I used to think the worst thing about working nights up here was the cold and the loneliness. Now I know there are worse things than being alone. There is the feeling that the ground itself is paying attention, and that one night, when the snow is just right, it might decide that the line between under and above does not matter as much as we think it does. I saw a child hiding behind the headstones. My name's Aaron Blake. I'm from a little place called Miller's Ford, out past the edge of Rockfield, the kind of spot you only hear about when a bridge washes out or the diner changes owners again, and I work as grounds crew at Hillcrest Memorial Cemetery off County Road 7, mostly digging graves, trimming the grass, setting stones straight when the ground shifts, all the stuff nobody thinks about when they drive by the fence and look the other way. And I know how this sounds, sitting here saying it out loud into my phone, in this car that will not start, with the dash clock stuck on 3:3 and that stupid battery light glowing at me like an eye, and the gate right there in front of me with the sign that says cemetery rules and a list nobody reads. But I am telling you, this is not some made-up story. This is not something I read online and decided to repeat. This is what happened to me, and I cannot do this in one clean line from start to finish. My head does not work that way anymore, so I am just going to talk, and you can take it or leave it, but I need it out of me. Because every time I close my eyes, I see that kid's head tilting around the stone and the way the dirt moved under my boots, and there is no one else I can say this to without them looking at me like I need help. So, listen. It started on a day that did not deserve to have anything strange in it. That is the part that sticks with me. How normal it was. That morning, I had the same cheap cereal I always buy, the store brand cornflakes that go soggy too fast, and I poured too much sugar on them because we were out of fruit. And I sat at my little kitchen table with the rip in the vinyl seat and checked my phone while I ate. Thumb scrolling, nothing. Weather said cloudy all day. Slight chance of showers. Nothing dramatic. I had on my usual work stuff. The dark green Hillcrest polo with the faded logo. One of the older ones because I did not feel like digging out the newer shirt. And it still had that weird brown stain high on the right side from where the trimmer kicked up something last summer. No matter how many times I washed it, that spot just stayed. Like the fabric decided to keep it. My jeans were already stiff from dried mud at the cuffs. My work boots were by the door, laces half broken. And I remember checking the time twice because I did not want to be late for once. It was 7:18 the first time I looked, and 7:21 when I finally got moving. I grabbed my thermos, the red one with the handle that squeaks, filled it with that strong coffee from the cheap machine that makes the kitchen smell burned for an hour, and I lock the door out of habit, even though nobody ever bothers that side of the building. The drive to the cemetery is 15 minutes if you hit the lights right. You stay on Main, past the grocery, cut over by the old feed store with a broken sign. Then you go under the highway, and it is just fields and a strip of woods, and then the chain link starts. The same fence I am parked in front of right now. The morning shift at Hillcrest is quiet. Nobody is visiting yet. The funeral home van comes later. The big days are weekends and holidays, but this was a weekday, just another Tuesday that might as well have been any other day. I pulled in at 7:37, clocked in on the old punch machine that stamps the time a little crooked. The card for that week already had 4 lines on it, and my supervisor, Dale, was in the shed going over the board. He had his usual coffee in the white mug that says, "Best Grandpa." Even though his grandkids live 3 states away, he looked up and said, "Blake, glad you actually beat the rain." Even though it was not raining and did not look like it would for a while, that was his way of saying good morning. He pointed at the dry erase board. We had 3 burials scheduled that week, one that day in the older section near the front, one on Thursday up on the hill, and one pending, waiting on paperwork. My job that morning was mowing Section C and then helping set the liners for the grave by the woods in the back half. The one that turned into all this, at the time it was just a note on a board, row 19, plot 7. Open and set by end of day? Nothing special. We open plots all the time. There is a system, you mark your corners, you bring the backhoe around, you dig clean, you slope properly, you check your depth. The part nobody thinks about is how much math it takes. Making sure you line up with old burials, not hitting anything, staying inside the limits. It is not just a hole, there's a map for every row and number. And I knew that back section map like the back of my hand, or I thought I did. Anyway, the first half of the day was mowing, which I hate, not because of the work, but because the sound of the mower over the stones makes me feel like I am in trouble, like I am being too loud where I should be quiet. The ground was damp, not soaked, just that kind of moisture that makes clipping stick to everything. And I pushed that mower up and down those lanes, weaving between headstones that leaned different ways, reading names without meaning to. I do not try to. They just pass under your eyes. Dates of birth, dates of death, little phrases like loving mother or gone fishing. You start to feel like you know people you never met. I remember stopping once to kick a fake flower that had blown off back toward a grave. The plastic was faded, the little metal stem bent, and I thought, somebody put this here and nobody has come back to fix it. I checked my watch then. It was 10:11. My phone buzzed with some ad. Nothing real. The air smelled like cut grass and that wet stone smell you get when you spray down the walkways. Completely normal. That is the thing. If someone had told me, hey, something is gonna crawl into your life today and not leave, I would have laughed right there next to Section B by the big maple. But nobody tells you. It just slides in where there was nothing before. I took my lunch break at 12:22. I remember because I joked to myself about all the twos in the time. I sat on the low brick wall by the maintenance shed, ate the ham sandwich I had slapped together in the morning. The bread was already going stale on the edges, and I drank half my thermos. Dale came by and said, "We got that late call. Family wants the back row open today if we can manage it. Overtime, if you stay." And I said, sure. Without even thinking, extra hours are extra money, even if it means staying past dark. I have done plenty of late digs. There's nothing dramatic about it. You set up the floodlights, you watch out for holes, you go home tired. That was my thinking. That is all. After lunch, we got the markers and the spray paint and the measuring tape. The plot was in the far back, row 19, as far as you can go before the grass gives way to the line of trees. After that, it is just woods, private land, hunting stands somewhere out there, and if you look past the last stones, you can see the drop in the land, the way it dips toward the creek. I have been working there 4 years, and that back row always felt a little different. Not haunted or anything, just quieter, like the sound from the road and the houses does not quite reach it. We walked out there around 1. The clouds had thickened. The light was that flat gray that makes everything the same color, even the flowers. Dale checked the map, the laminated sheet on his clipboard. He checked the little metal row marker that says 19 inches stamped numbers. We counted the stones. We paced the distance from the last one set. We found the spot. It was marked on the map as empty. That is important. I did not think it was at the time. But I need you to remember that on the grid in front of us, row 19, plot 7 was blank. No name, no dates, no previous burial. I marked the corners with my little orange flags, ran the tape again to be sure. We looked at each other and nodded. Routine. I went and brought the backhoe around. The machine is old, yellow paint chipped, seat torn, but it does the job. I lined it up and started to dig. The first scoop of earth always feels heavier than it should, like the ground does not want to let go. Then it gets easier. You get into a rhythm, cut, scoop, swing, dump. The pile builds up on the blue tarp so you can backfill later, and you do not think about what you are actually doing, because if you do too much, you start to picture the boxes that go in there, and you cannot work if you think that hard about it. So you think about football, bills, what to have for dinner, anything else. That day, I was thinking about a game I had watched the night before. Whether the quarterback got a bad deal on that penalty, dumb stuff, and the ground under the backhoe just did what ground does. It gave way in layers. Light brown, topsoil, darker loam under that. Little rocks, nothing special. The woods behind me were just a line of trunks and branches. The breeze made a shh, shh sound in the leaves. I do not know when exactly I noticed the kid. That part is blurry, but I know what I was doing right before. I had hopped down into the hole to clean up one of the corners with a shovel, make the wall straight. The machine does most of the work, but we still clean by hand. And I remember standing down there, the dirt cool under my boots, the wall of earth in front of my face, showing all the layers like a weird cake. And I got that feeling between my shoulder blades, the one you get when you know someone is watching you, not in a dramatic way, just that prickling line like a cold draft on skin. I turned to look up just to see if Dale had come back. I thought maybe he was standing at the edge, but he was off checking something in section D. I knew that he had said so, but still, I checked. And that is when I saw the top of a little head behind a stone, a few rows over, just the edge of hair and the faint curve of a forehead, peeking out from behind one of the older markers. It was one of those tall, thin stones with a rounded top, gray and worn. I could not read the name from where I was, but I knew that it did not get a lot of visitors because nobody ever left flowers there anyway. I saw that bit of head and the one visible eye, and for a second I thought it was some neighbor kid who had followed somebody in or cut through the back fence. It happens sometimes. Teenagers go drink or whatever near the tree line. But this was a small child, 8 maybe, hard to tell from that distance, cheeks still round, the eye looking straight toward me, not moving, just watching. I pushed my shovel into the dirt and called up, "Hey there, you okay? You lost." I was not trying to scare them, just make sure they were not about to run into the work area. The air up there went, still in that weird way. It does sometimes when clouds thicken, the leaves stop making noise, and the little head ducked back out of sight. I sighed, told myself I was just catching something out of the corner of my eye. Maybe it was a mourner bending down. I wiped my forehead with the back of my wrist, left a streak of dirt on my skin, and went back to squaring the corner. A few minutes later, I heard a small scrape of stone, like a shoe against the base of a marker. I turned again, and there the kid was, different stone this time, closer, maybe 3 graves away now, peeking from the opposite side, same one eye, same stillness, just watching me. And I remember thinking, where are your parents? There was no funeral scheduled in that section. Nobody else was around. My stomach did a little twist, but I tried to be rational. Kids wander. Maybe they were here visiting a grave and got bored. I set the shovel against the wall and climbed up out of the hole, pulled myself over the edge, brushed off my jeans, and I raised my voice more. "Hey, it's not safe over here. You should not be playing around the equipment. Can you come out a second?" I stepped away from the grave so I would not fall back in, and I started walking toward the stone they were hiding behind. I kept my hands where they could see them, so I would not look threatening, talking the way you talk to shy kids. "It's okay. I'm not mad. I just want to make sure you don't get hurt." But as I took those few steps, something felt off. I did not hear any gravel crunch. There is always that sound between the rows, the little stones underfoot, The dry bits of cut grass, you hear your own steps, but this time it was just mine. Like there was no one else there making any noise at all. When I got to the stone and leaned slightly to the side to see around it, there was nothing there. No kid, no footprints in the soft patch of dirt at the base, just the name and dates on the stone and a little patch of moss. My heart thumped hard, but I laughed at myself because what else do you do? I said out loud, "Man, you are seeing things, Aaron. Get some sleep." And I went back to the grave, telling myself I must have seen the shadow of a tree or something. Your brain fills in shapes. That is what they say. I climbed back down, finished cleaning the corners, checked my depth. We set the liner. Heavy plastic box that the coffin goes into. That part is always a hassle. You have to get it level. And the whole time, I tried not to look toward the stones. But you know how it is when you tell yourself not to do something, it just makes you do it more. I kept glancing up, and once, when I looked, I saw that kid again. Same height, same round face, but now they were on the other side of the row, closer to the woods, halfway hidden behind a double stone for somebody who died in the 70s. I could see more of the face now. Pale, hair cut straight across the forehead, no hat, no coat even though it was chilly, just a thin long-sleeve shirt, arms around the stone like they were hugging it from behind. I remember saying quietly, "Where are you coming from?" And that prickling on my neck got worse. I almost yelled for Dale. But the thought of him coming over and seeing nothing, or worse, seeing a regular kid and thinking I was overreacting, kept me quiet. I blinked and the kid stepped just enough to look at me directly, head tilted a little, eyes too serious for that age. And then they moved their hand, slow, and pointed, not at me, but at the ground where I was standing, at the open grave. That motion was the first thing they did that looked like a normal child. A raise of the arm, finger extended, but the way the finger lined up with the rectangle of earth made my palms sweat, my throat went dry, and even though it was not loud, I heard the words they said clear as anything, like they were right next to my ear. A small voice, flat, not whispery like in movies, just like a kid telling you something important. Don't dig there. The air went colder when they said it. Like the cloud cover thickened overhead, I swallowed hard. I heard myself answer back, "What?" Stupid thing to say, I heard them. There was nothing unclear about it, but that is what came out of my mouth. They did not repeat it. They just pointed again, eyes never blinking, and my head did that thing where it tries to find the grown-up. Like maybe this was some bad joke somebody was playing. Maybe there was a camera somewhere. I looked to the sides, nothing. I looked back, and the kid was gone. Just space, gray stones, trees, a plastic flower rattling on its wire. I felt my knees go a little weak. I had to grab the side of the grave wall to steady myself. My hand came away with dirt under the nails. I took a breath that did not really feel like it went all the way in, and I told myself, "You are working too many doubles. You skipped dinner last night. You are seeing things because your blood sugar is messed up. Eat something, sit down, stop staring at the same spot in the ground for too long, all the rational talk." I climbed out and checked my phone. It was 3:16, clouds thick, light already fading in that way. It does in late afternoon when you think it should be early, but it feels like evening. I texted Dale to say the liner was set and asked if he wanted me to backfill the edges or leave it open. He texted back, "Leave it clean, funeral tomorrow at 10. You can set up chairs before you clock in. If you want extra," I almost typed back something about the kid. My thumb hovered over the letters, but I deleted it, put the phone back in my pocket, and told myself again that if I just got through the day, I would go home, eat real food, sleep, and that would be the end of it. I did not see the child again that afternoon. Not directly, but every time I glanced toward the woods, I expected that head to be peeking, and the fact that it wasn't almost made it worse. The normal cemetery sounds came back. A crow cawing from a tree, a car on the road beyond the fence, the low beep of a truck backing up somewhere near the front. Dale waved at me from Section A and pointed at his watch, meaning, shift almost over. I half jogged back to the shed, turned in the keys for the backhoe, rinsed the mud off my boots at the spigot, and tried to shake the feeling that had settled between my ribs, like there was a stone there now. I could have gone home then. I should have. But when Dale said, If you stay and help me move the tents for tomorrow and finish the dirt around that back plot, I can put you down for overtime." My mouth said, "Sure, no problem." Before my brain caught up, the idea of walking back there in the dark did make my stomach flip. But I told myself we would be done before the sun went down. I do not know. I just did not think. I never do at the parts of life that matter. We moved the tents, those big green canopies they put over the chairs so people do not get rained on. We checked the folding chairs for mud. We set up the little fake grass strips they used to cover the edges of the grave for the service. Just routine. The sky got darker faster than it should have, like someone turned down a dimmer. And by the time we put the last chair in place, the security lights along the main path flicked on, the kind with a yellowish light that makes everything look tired. Dale looked at his watch and said, "I gotta get home. The little one has some school thing." "You good to lock up?" I wanted to say, "No, I am not good. Please stay, just 10 more minutes." But what came out was, "Yeah, sure, I'll finish tamping the dirt around the back plot and then I'll close the gate," he said. "Thanks, man. Just make sure the shed is locked and the truck keys are in the office." And he left, his taillights disappeared down the lane, and I stood there in the middle of the cemetery, feeling stupid. They were just stones and grass and dirt. I had walked these paths in the dark before. I told myself that over and over as I got the tamper and shovel and headed toward the back. The security lights do not reach all the way to row 19. Back there it is, mostly just whatever light spills from the sky, and on an overcast evening, that is not much, the outlines of the stones look like teeth in the ground. I know I am not supposed to say things like that. They told me no metaphors, but that is what popped into my head at the time. Little jagged shapes. My boots sounded too loud on the gravel, every crunch echoing, and as I got closer to the woods, the air cooled off in a way that had nothing to do with the time of day. It was like stepping into the shade of a building, only there is no building there, just the tree line. I could see the open plot from a distance, the rectangle of darkness in the lighter grass, the liner down there, ready, the pile of dirt beside it, covered by the tarp, everything the way we left it, no kids, no other cars, no visitors. I told myself their parents probably took them home hours ago, if they were ever there at all. I set the tamper down near the tarp, checked my phone, 6:41. I had maybe 20 minutes of workable light left. I wanted to be done long before then. I took a breath, that smell of damp soil and something like wet leaves from the woods, and I started smoothing the edges of the pile, tamping the loose dirt that had spilled around the sides. It is boring work, but it has to be done. You do not want people tripping on uneven ground when they come out in their nice shoes. I got into a rhythm, again, lift, pack, scrape, circle the grave, check the corners, and for a few minutes my shoulders unclenched just because my body knew what to do. Then I noticed the quiet. There is always a little noise, distant traffic, a dog barking somewhere, an airplane way high up. But it was like somebody had put a glass dome over that back section. I could hear my breathing and the soft thuds of the tamper, but nothing else. The hairs on my arms stood up. I stopped moving and listened. The woods did not rustle, no birds in the branches, nothing, just that weird, thick quiet. And from the corner of my eye, between two headstones, about 4 graves down, I saw a pale shape, the top of that kid's head, just the barest curve of hair, watching. I did not turn my head all the way. I did not want to spook them or myself. I kept my eyes on the ground and said, "You really shouldn't be out here this late. The gate's about to be locked. You need to be with your folks." My voice sounded thin and too loud at the same time. There was no answer, no giggle, no shuffle of feet. I swallowed hard and started to pack the dirt faster, telling myself, if you just finish, you can leave. You can lock the shed and you can go home and not come back here in the dark again. I felt that gaze on me the whole time, like a weight. And then, without warning, something under my boots shifted. Not like a normal little sink, more like the ground took a breath. The patch of earth between the hole and the tarp rose, just enough that I could feel it, like something pushed up from under the surface and then eased back down. My feet slid a bit. I caught myself. My heart jumped. I looked at the plot, then at the pile. Nothing looked out of place. The liner was still where it should be. There was no cave-in, But somewhere under there, deeper than we had dug, the soil moved, not a lot, just enough to let me know it had moved. That is when I finally looked toward where I had seen the kid. I turned my head, slow, and there they were, closer than I thought, standing full behind a low stone, hands gripping the top edge, only their face and fingers visible, eyes wide, not scared exactly, more like they were waiting to see what I would do. The tamper was heavy in my hands, suddenly useless. I heard myself say, "Did you feel that?" Like they would answer, like this was a normal conversation. They did not say yes or no. They just kept looking at me, and then their right hand let go of the stone and lifted again, arm thin, sleeve hanging loose, and they pointed again, this time not at the grave I was working on, but at the exact spot where I'd felt the ground move. The rectangle between the liner and the tarp. They held their arm out, fingers steady, and their mouth opened. I did not want to hear what would come out. Some part of me already knew. The voice that came was the same tone as before, not loud, not echoing, just clear, "Don't dig there." That was it, 2 times, same words. My throat closed up, my eyes stung. The tamper slipped from my hands and hit the ground with a dull, wrong sound, like the air had been taken out of it. And as soon as that noise hit, the kid was gone. Not ran away gone, not ducked down gone, just gone. 1 second they were there. The next second, I was looking at the bare top of the stone and the tree line behind it. I took 2 steps backward without meaning to. My boot heel caught the edge of the open grave, and I flailed, windmilling my arms like some cartoon, managed not to fall in only because I grabbed the metal corner of the liner. My fingers hurt from the sudden weight, and while my heart was trying to pound its way out of my chest, the ground between the grave and the pile bulged again, more this time, a slow, lurching push from below, like something big was pressing up with both hands. The soil cracked in a line. I heard the faintest grind of pressure on plastic. Somewhere under my boots, the liner creaked, and this sound came up through the dirt. I hate trying to describe it. It was not a voice, not anything you could call a sound an animal makes. It was more like pressure finding space, like a chair sliding a little on a rough floor, but deep, buried, the hairs on the back of my neck prickled so hard it hurt. I scrambled away from the edge, tripped for real this time over the tarp, fell onto my side, my elbow taking the worst of it. My breath left me in a short, stupid noise, and I stared at that strip of ground, waiting for it to do it again. It did not. The bulge settled. The dirt looked normal again. But I knew that something down there had moved. Not just shifting like a natural thing, but in a way that responded to the world above it, like it had pressed its hands up and then heard the metal in the air and decided to stop. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I nearly screamed. I fumbled it out, hands shaking. It was just a weather alert, chance of showers overnight, nothing special. I jammed it back in my pocket, got to my feet as fast as I could, grabbed the tamper without even brushing the dirt off, and I started walking away, fast. Not running, because that would make it real somehow, just that stiff, fast walk you do when you do not want to look like you are running from nothing. I did not look back at the grave. I did not look toward the stone where the kid had been. I just headed for the main path, my boots crunching on gravel. The quiet broke as I got closer to the front. I heard a car on the road, somebody's music way off, a dog barking again, all the normal sound rushing back in like it had been waiting. I locked the shed with hands that would not stop shaking, dropped the keys in the office, wrote a note on the clipboard that the back plot was ready, which was a lie because I had not finished the tamping, and I forced myself to drive home without looking into the rearview mirror too much, afraid I would see that pale face looking over the back seat. My apartment felt wrong when I got in, like the ceiling was lower. I turned every light on, the overheads, the lamps, even the one over the stove. I stood in the middle of the living room and tried to slow my breathing down. My neighbor knocked on the wall once because my TV was too loud. I had turned it up to drown out the sound of my own thoughts. I ate half a frozen pizza and did not taste any of it. My hands jumped every time the fridge kicked on. I kept looking at the closed curtains like something was going to press against them. I went to bed around midnight, more out of exhaustion than anything. Lay there staring at the ceiling until my eyes burned. At some point, I must have fallen asleep because I woke up and it was 3:01 on my clock. That time that shows up too often in stories like this, only this is not a story. It was my room. Old radiator knocking, faint streetlight glow bleeding around the edges of the blinds, and underneath all that was this sound. So soft I almost thought I was imagining it. The tiniest crunch of gravel, not out front where the parking lot is, but right under my window, the narrow strip of yard that runs along the side of the building. The kind of sound you get when a small kid walks very slowly on loose stone, heel and toe picking each rock. My heart started punching my ribs from the inside. I told myself it was a cat, raccoon, something like that. But the steps had a pace, steady, counted. Same as out there between the rows. I lay there frozen, listening. And they stopped right under my window. I could picture someone standing there, small, looking up where I was. I did not move. I did not get up to check. I just stared at the ceiling and counted my breaths until the knocking in my chest slowed enough that I knew I was not going to pass out. Then there was this little shift in the air, a colder patch that rolled across the room. My skin prickled, and I smelled it. That same mix of dirt and cut grass and whetstone from the cemetery, wrong in my bedroom. I squeezed my eyes shut for a second. And behind my eyelids, I saw the kid's finger pointing again, so I opened them and just waited. Nothing else happened. No voice, no face. The smell faded. But I did not go back to sleep. I watched the clock tick from 3:01 to 4:30 to 5:15, and when the sky finally lightened, I felt like I had not slept at all. I called in sick that morning, which I do not do. Dale sounded surprised. He said, "You sure? We got that service at 10. I need you to set up the green." And I said, "I'm sorry. I can't. I'm not feeling right." He grunted, said, "Fine, feel better," and hung up. I stayed home, walked circles in my apartment, sat on the couch, got up, sat down again. At one point, I walked to the window and pulled the curtain back just an inch. The gravel under my window looked the same as always. No footprints, no disturbed stones, nothing. I told myself if I went back to work the next day and everything was normal, I would forget it, chalk it up to some weird stress thing, but nothing was normal when I got back. I pulled into the lot at 7:35 like always, punched in, and the first thing I saw when I walked into the shed was Dale's face. Pinched and tight, he was on the phone, nodding too much, saying, "Yes, sir, of course, I understand." When he hung up, he saw me and said, "You picked a great day to be out, Blake." I frowned, asked what happened. He jerked his thumb toward the back, toward the direction of row 19. "We had to stop the service yesterday. Liner collapsed or something. Ground gave out. They had to bring everybody back today. We were out there half the night with the funeral director and the vault company and the family all upset." His voice had that worn-out edge. I felt my stomach drop. I asked, "Collapsed how?" Trying to sound casual, he rubbed his forehead, left a streak of dirt across it. "I don't know, man. They lowered the coffin in. Everything seemed fine. Then one side just buckled, like something pushed from underneath. But that ain't possible. Those liners are rated for more than that. Anyway, they had to haul it back up. Family was right there. It was a mess. They're not happy. Director's not happy. I'm not happy. And now we gotta fix the whole thing and pretend like this kind of thing happens all the time." My hands went cold. My throat felt too tight. I thought of that bulge in the ground, the creak in the plastic, that buried pressure sound, the kid pointing and saying not to dig there. And I wanted to tell him, I really did. But what was I going to say? Some child that may not even be real told me not to dig that plot because something under there did not want it, and I ignored it. They would have looked at me like I had lost my mind. So I shut up, I grabbed my gloves, and when he said, "Come on, we gotta go inspect the damage, see if we hit a void or something," I walked with him even though my legs felt like they were full of sand. The path back there felt longer than usual. The air cooler again by the woods. There was police tape around the grave, the yellow kind they use for everything, fluttering a little. The fake grass had been pulled back, dirt spilled out everywhere. It was a mess. The liner was still in place, mostly, but one long side was bowed inward. The plastic caved like someone had kicked it from the inside with a lot of force. There were scratches all along it, long shallow marks that ran diagonally. I forced myself to look down. The coffin inside was scuffed, not broken, but dented on that same side, and even from up at the edge, I could see the metal had bent in places where nothing should have touched it. The funeral director, Mr. Crowley, was there, his suit more wrinkled than I had ever seen it. He looked at us and said, "This cannot happen. Do you understand? They nearly had a heart attack. We will not tell them this was a structural issue. We tell them it was a settling problem, something with the soil. You get this fixed today, and you make sure nothing like this ever happens on my grounds again." His voice was low and angry. Dale just nodded, said, "Yes, sir," over and over, while I stared at the buckled plastic, my mind replaying the motion from the night before. I could not stop thinking, if I had stayed a minute longer, if I had been standing right there when that push came, would the ground have given way enough to pull me under? I know that sounds dramatic, but that is where my head went. Dale sent me to get the shovel and probe rods, talk about voids and caverns, like we were just dealing with a sinkhole. He said, "We'll dig it wider, brace it, make sure it's safe, check if there's some kind of old drainage problem, maybe an unmarked vault or something." And I nodded, because that is what you do, you nod, but my brain was stuck on that kid, on those words, "Don't dig there." I kept thinking, if I had listened, we would have opened a different plot. Maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe it still would have. Maybe I do not matter at all in this. I do not know. All I know is the rest of that day, I felt like I was moving underwater. We widened the grave. We braced the sides. We checked the soil. There was nothing unusual according to the tools. No big cave below, no rotten roots. But every time my shovel hit something solid, I flinched, my ears straining for that wrong sound. We set a new liner, thicker, double-checking every edge, put the coffin back in with the help of the vault guys, all while trying not to look at the bowed one they had dragged out. It lay on the grass like a broken rib, those scratches glaring up at me whenever my eyes slid that way. That night, they held the service again, short, tight-lipped. I stayed away. I found excuses to be on the other side of the grounds. Nobody wanted me near it anyway. Not after the mistake, even though officially it was nobody's fault, just ground settling. The family left quick. The director wiped his face a few times when he thought nobody was looking, and the day ended with the new grave filled, grass mats laid, flowers arranged, and if you drove by, you'd see nothing wrong, just another fresh mound with roses and a name, like 100 others in that cemetery. I went home feeling sick in a way that had nothing to do with any virus. My hands shook when I tried to eat, so I did not. I just sat on the couch and listened to nothing, waiting for the sound of gravel again. It did not come that night. I lay awake anyway. Then the next night, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe whatever happened at that plot was a one-time thing. The kid a stress dream that leaked into waking, all that. But a week later, I was driving home from my brother's place, took the long way without thinking, ended up going down County Road 7 instead of cutting through town. That road runs right past the back of the cemetery, no gate on that side, just chain link and trees. And as I came up on the bend where the land dips, my radio cut out, just for a second, not usual static, but a full dead silence. Then a crackle, then nothing again. I hit the side of the unit, like that would fix it. And I glanced out my window, past the ditch, through the fence, toward the back rows, toward where I knew row 19 sat. Even though you cannot really see the numbers from the road, I could make out the line of stones, their tops like little steps along the horizon of grass. And in the space where that problematic grave is, right where the new mound should be, I saw movement. At first I thought it was just a flag in the wind or a person visiting late, but then I realized it was that same small shape, low to the ground, level with the stones, ahead, watching the road, watching me. I could not see details at that speed, but my stomach knew. The wheel wobbled under my hand. I nearly went off onto the gravel shoulder. I yanked the car back, heart pounding, and when I looked in the rearview mirror, just for a second, I saw a figure standing at the fence, small, right where the trees start. As if they had moved that far in the time it took me to travel 10 yards, my radio hissed back to life with the end of a song. Like nothing happened, I drove straight home and sat in the parking lot for a good 10 minutes before I could make myself get out. Staring at the gravel by my building's door, half expecting to see a path of small, neat impressions leading from nowhere to my steps, There was nothing, just old gum, cigarette butts, dark spots from oil leaks. That night, I dragged a dresser in front of my bedroom window, which was dumb because if something wanted to look in from the outside, that would not stop it. But it made me feel less like I would open my eyes and see a face pressed to the glass. I started avoiding certain roads after that. I would drive 10 extra minutes to keep from passing any burial ground. Even the tiny family plots out on the old farms, I would turn the radio up when I had no choice but go near one, trying to drown out any crunching sounds my brain might invent. I stopped walking through the cemetery when I did not have to. If there was a job that meant going to the back rows, I found someone else to take it. I told Dale my knee was bothering me on hills. He gave me a look but did not push. Maybe he understood more than he let on, or maybe he was just too tired to argue. I do not know. I lasted 3 more months at Hillcrest after that. Then one day in March, it snowed this heavy, wet snow that clung to every stone, made the place look softer, quieter, the kind of weather where the sound of the shovel is muffled and you can hear your own breath too much. We had to clear paths for a funeral, simple job, and as I pushed the shovel, the blade cutting a line through the white, I noticed prints crossing the main path. Not shoe prints, not boots, but little ovals, toes and heel, bare, you could see each toe, pressed into that wet snow like someone had walked across it without shoes in 30-degree weather. The trail came from the side where there is just a fence and ditch, crossed the path, and stopped right at the base of a stone in section F. It did not go around, did not turn back, just ended. Like the walker had gone straight into the marker and vanished. I stood there, breathing hard, shovel handle slick under my gloves, and I thought, if I keep working here, something is going to happen to me that I cannot come back from. So I went to Dale that afternoon and told him I was done. He did not look surprised, just tired. He said, "You find something else lined up," I said. "I'll figure it out," he nodded, patted my shoulder once, said, "Some folks aren't built for this place long term. Nothing wrong with that." And that was it. 4 years of work wrapped in one little sentence. I thought leaving would fix it, like the line around my life was the fence. And if I stayed on the other side of it, whatever lives with those stones would forget me, but it has not. That is why I am in this car right now. Engine dead, breath fogging the inside of the windshield. The gate and my headlights, you can still see the letters on the arch. If you squint, Hillcrest Memorial. And just past that, if you really look, the faint shapes of stones. I had not planned to come here tonight. I was driving home from a late shift at the warehouse. Different job now, stacking boxes, normal stuff, headphones in most nights. No graves, no rows. I took the long way again without meaning to. My mind wandered, the road was empty, and by the time I realized where I was at the turn for County Road 7. I could have gone straight, but my hands turned the wheel, like some part of me decided we were gonna look just once, just to prove there was nothing there anymore. I told myself, if I swing by and see nothing weird, maybe I can finally let it go. Bad idea. I pulled into the gravel apron by the gate, put the car in park, left the engine running. The clock said 2:57. The sky was low and black, no stars. The security lights inside the cemetery threw pale halos on the first row or two. Everything else behind that was shapes and shadow. I sat there, fingers tapping the steering wheel, listening to the engine idle. I did not plan to get out. I just wanted to sit and look. I counted stones. I watched my own reflection in the glass. I almost convinced myself I felt nothing, that the tightness in my chest was just habit. Then the engine sputtered once, like a cough, and died. The dash lights flickered. The radio went silent mid-song, and the battery light came on solid. That little red icon that means you have messed up somewhere. I turned the key. Nothing. No click, no struggle, just nothing. My heart did that slow drop you get when you realize you are stuck. I tried again. Nothing. I checked my phone. Battery at 30%. No problem there. But the car was dead. And right as I was thinking, okay, I will call a tow. I will deal with this in the morning. The headlight beams dimmed, just a fraction, and then steadied. And in that dimming, that quick dip of light over the gravel and the gate, I saw a shape at the edge of the beams, inside the fence, lined up with the main path, small, right height for a kid. Standing still between the first and second rows, I blinked, told myself it was a trick of the shadows, that I was projecting. But as my eyes adjusted, I saw the outline more clearly. A head, shoulders, thin arms at its sides, and that tilt of the head I recognized. Even from this distance, my mouth went dry. I locked the doors without thinking. The thunk of the locks sounded too loud. The figure did not move, did not flinch, just stood there, watching the car. I whispered, "No," to myself? Like that would undo it? My phone felt heavy in my hand. I did not want to call anyone now. What would I say? Come get me from in front of the place where I used to dig holes, because there is a child-shaped shadow staring at me. I put the phone down on my lap and just gripped the wheel. My knuckles white. The air in the car got colder. The glass fogged more with each breath. And then, under the faint hum of the headlight bulbs, I heard it. Not loud, not dramatic, just there. The crunch of gravel from the shoulder beside my car. Small, slow steps, coming from behind and moving toward the front. I knew that sound. I had heard it under my bedroom window, between the rows. In my head, I told myself it was an animal. I dared myself not to look. And of course, I looked, turned my head, slow, toward the passenger side window. And there, in the weak beam from the headlights and the dull orange glow of the distant streetlight, I saw the stones of the ditch and the fence beyond. But at the very edge of that light, right where the gravel meets the grass, I saw impressions forming. Not prints already there, but forming, one after the other. Small, child-sized, toes and heel, pressing down into the stones and flattening them, each one appearing as if a foot had just stepped there. But there was nothing above them. No leg, no shoe, no bare skin. Just the definite indentation moving along the side of my car toward the front. My breath hitched so hard it hurt. I could not look away. I watched them come level with the passenger door, then the hood, then stop. Right in front of where the headlights hit the gate, the air in the car felt thin. My ears rang with my own pulse. And from inside the cemetery, from where that figure had stood in the path, I heard the same voice that had spoken to me at the grave. Clear as if they were sitting in the passenger seat, "You need to go." Simple as that. 4 words. And every muscle in my body locked up. I wanted to shout back. I tried. The car won't start. But my tongue felt stuck. I managed to whisper, "I would if I could." My words fogged the glass, and as soon as I said it, the indentations in the gravel shivered, like whoever was making them shifted their weight, and then the car rocked. Just once, a gentle forward jerk, like someone had pushed the back bumper. The dash lights flickered, and the engine coughed, then roared back to life on its own. Key still in the same position I had left it. I did not think. I slammed the car into reverse. My tires spun on the loose stone, grabbed, and the whole vehicle lurched backward. The headlights swinging away from the gate, and the path, and the small figure there. I did not check the mirrors. I did not look to see if there were more prints forming behind me. I just backed onto the road, slammed the shifter into drive, and took off. Faster than I should have on that narrow strip, my hands gripping the wheel so tight they cramped. My heart pounding. I did not slow down until I was back under the highway, far from the fence, far from the stones. Only then did I let out the breath I had been holding since the crunch of the gravel started. And even now, sitting in a different spot, away from that gate, finishing this into my phone, with my hazard lights blinking, my hands still will not stop shaking. The engine is running fine now. The battery light off, like nothing ever went wrong. But I saw those prints. I heard that voice. I felt the push. And you can tell me it is stress, that I am tired, that working in that place did something to my head. And maybe you are right. Maybe there is some simple answer sitting in a book somewhere that would make this all make sense. But it does not feel like. It feels like the cemetery is not just a place you leave behind by clocking out. It feels like once you spend enough time walking between those stones, cutting that grass, standing at the edge of open ground, waiting for a box that holds someone's whole life to be lowered in, the lines in your head shift, and certain things notice you the way you notice them. I do not walk past cemeteries anymore if I can help it. I cross the street, I change routes, I turn the radio up, I pretend I am just avoiding traffic or construction. But the real reason is that I am afraid I will look in and see that kid again, standing behind a headstone, finger lifted, pointing at something only they understand, telling me not to dig where some map says is empty. And I am even more scared of what will happen if I ignore it again, because the ground remembers what we do to it. And sometimes, man, sometimes it pushes back, and it uses the smallest things it can find to warn us, like a child behind the headstones, who never leaves footprints until you are the one standing too close to where something underneath has not finished moving.